Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Kami gives his abilities to Naruto during the wave mission part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. The Shinigami had done and seen many things in its immortal existence, but there was one thing he had never expected to happen. As he sat in a void, contemplating on things very few other beings could understand, he felt a foreign power enter his domain. He recognized it almost immediately. It would be a long time before he forgot that woman. He looked to his side and saw a tear appear in space, a portal opening up and something about to come through. Well, if she thought she could take him, then she would be sorely mistaken. Shinigami paused as a soft voice greeted him instead. Please, I need your help. I know you don't trust me, nor do I expect you, but if you don't, an innocent child will die. The voice soon faded out and the portal closed. Shinigami was silent for a moment before sighing. I had a feeling today would be a bad day. Some time later, unknown location. There it is, my whole story. Shinigami said to his two sisters, Kami and Yami. He had just finished telling them the story of the portal opening up and someone speaking to him. Shinigami was currently in his preferred form, a purple-skinned demonic figure with shaggy white hair and a white kimono. I have no doubt it was Kagaya. I'd know that voice anywhere. Yami grit her teeth and clenched a fist. Hasn't that little bitch learned her lesson? I should go down there and get rid of her for good. Yami was a woman of incredible beauty, perfect delicate features fitting a princess in a storybook. She had long black hair, falling down her back like a waterfall of ink, sucking in all light that touched it. Her eyes were yellow with black sclera, containing a coldness that could freeze hell itself. She was dressed in a black kimono, slightly falling over her shoulders and showing off her long legs. She was barefoot and kept a sword on her hip. It seemed to be as dark as she did. Calm down you two, we shouldn't do anything rash. Kami said, holding her arms up to placate her siblings. Kami was almost an identical twin to Yami, however her hair and eyes were brown. She seemed to be near the opposite of her sister in every way minus appearance. Her eyes carried warmth and peace, a motherly smile was always on her face, and her elegant white kimono giving her an air of grace and nobility. This may very well be a trap, but why would Kagaya spend what precious little chakra she was able to squeeze together in the seal to contact us? She's no doubt completely powerless right now, so maybe there is some truth to what she says. Yami scoffed at her sister's thought, she's trying to play us. We all know damn well she can't see anything on the planet from her seal, so her little ploy of an innocent child dying is a complete lie. Yami wanted no part of this. Kagaya was a threat, they could not risk her being released. Due to a set of ancient laws, they couldn't interfere with the lives of the mortals on their world. Kagaya may have been revered as a goddess, but she was still mortal, so they couldn't just go kill her if she got out. The humans aren't strong enough to handle her. It'll be another era of Kagaya ruling everything with her damn eye. Shinigami chimed in again, I agree with you Yami, but Kami also has a point. Kagaya is powerless, so why would she do this? Even if we went to see her in the seal, she has no power. Plus, I could sense no lies or ill intent from her. Both goddesses fell silent at this. Shinigami never misread a person. If he said they meant no harm, they didn't, period. Ami clapped her hands with a smile, well then. I'll go speak to her and see what she wants, you two watch, and if something goes wrong, then come help, okay? Without even waiting for a response, Kami disappeared in a flash. Yami groaned, us damn it. Why does she always do that? Shinigami shrugged as the two gods started observing their sister with Kagaya. Inside the moon, Kagaya's seal. Ami flashed into existence in front of the sealed Kagaya. The two were floating in a black void, Kagaya's seemingly sleeping form suspended in the air. Kami walked over and poked Kagaya in the forehead, pushing out a duplicate of the woman, this one awake. Kagaya frantically looked around before her eyes landed on Kami. You came. Thank you so much. She bowed low to Kami, further surprising the gods. Please, you have to act quickly, there isn't much time. Kami raised a hand to stop her, perhaps you can explain what's going on. Now what child needs saving? We know you can't see the world outside of here. Kami may have retained her motherly appearance, but there was steel in her eyes. Kagaya nodded, I'm sorry you see, when I started turning against Hagoromo and Hamura, I decided I needed something to help me beat them, so I went to my lover Tenji, and well Kami realized what she was saying and instantly focused on Kagaya's body, feeling another, much smaller life force in her body. I was sealed before I gave birth to him, so he's been suspended in here with me, but the seal is killing him, I can feel it. He's so small and weak he can't handle the seal's power, not even when I'm protecting him. Kagaya turned to Kami with desperation in her eyes and tears on her cheeks, please save him. Kami was silent, then turned to Kagaya and raised a delicate eyebrow, why do you care? I was under the impression you wanted all chakra for yourself, so why do you want me to help bring him into the world? Also you seem much more caring than I remember. Kagaya nodded, I think it's the seal, my chakra has been gone so long that, at least this part of me, is back to how I was before I went well crazy. She shook her head, I don't care if I spend the rest of eternity in this seal, just help him, please, I beg of you. Kagaya said, bowing to Kami again. All there was in the air was the silence of the void, and Kagaya was afraid her pleas had fallen on deaf ears. Then she heard it. A small gurgle, a squeak, then finally, crying a baby crying. Kagaya stood up and stared at Kami, who now held a small bundle in her arms. Kami was wrapping it in fine white cloth and smiling down at it. Kagaya stepped forward but stopped when Kami turned to her. Kami stared at her for a minute before holding the bundle out to her. Kagaya took a few shaky steps forward and took the bundle, looking down into the face of her youngest child. He looked up at her with a pair of Byakugan eyes just like hers, except they seemed to have the barest tinge of blue to them, with a tiny pair of horns poking through his skin at his hairline. He had a tuft of white hair on his head and 3 marks, like whiskers on his cheeks. As she held him, he smiled up at her and reached out to her. Kagaya's eyes widened as a pair of chakra hand constructs came out of his hands and pulled her closer. Kami walked over and giggled a bit, well, someone's already making trouble, such lovely eyes, and at such a young age. Pity they need to be sealed away. With a wave of her hand, the horns disappeared, his eyes gained a pair of pupils and turned to a deep sapphire blue, while his chakra was restrained a bit. Kagaya was a bit saddened by the changes, but brought her baby close to her, holding him for a while, and relishing in her one moment of clear thoughts of her family in a long time. Once she was done, she handed her baby back to Kami. Please make sure my little Naruto is safe, please. Then she disappeared, leaving only the sleeping Kagaya and the seal. Kami held Naruto, thinking of where to take him. Naruto, I like that name. I think you'll do great things in the future, little one. Konoha streets, midnight. Kami walked toward the Konoha orphanage to drop Naruto off, after thinking a bit, this as the best choice. It was a toss-up between here and Suna, but Konoha would have the resources to protect him after his abilities surfaced. Plus, there was soon to be a little girl here that could use a friend. Kami looked down at the bundle in her arms. You have a difficult life ahead of you, little one, but I have faith that you will grow and become the hero this world needs. Kami arrived at the orphanage and sat Naruto down on the step, still wrapped in his blanket. She knew this was an iffy decision, given what was going to happen in a few days, but she knew the orphanage and Naruto would be fine, she'd make it so. The fox wouldn't touch this building. Kami sighed as she knocked on the door and stood back, making herself invisible. She was all-knowing, but it was more a curse than a blessing, being able to see deaths coming, but not able to stop it. Kami watched as the matron of the orphanage opened up the door and noticed the baby. She seemed instantly taken with Naruto, cooing at him and playing with him. She took him inside and quickly went to work getting him a place there. Kami smiled, hopefully he would grow up to become a fine man. Oh, who was she kidding, she knew exactly what would happen. She couldn't wait. His life was like a good sitcom, or maybe a drama. Kami shook her head and disappeared, informing her siblings of the development. 10 years later, Konoha streets. Naruto, now 10 years old and standing at 5 feet tall, sighed to himself as he dusted off his shoulder. Another day, another fight. Naruto was wearing a white long-sleeved shirt and black pants with black shinobi sandals. His white, spiky hair hung down over his forehead, and his blue eyes sparkled with amusement. He and Yusaka had been minding their own business when these idiots came out of nowhere and started insulting her. Normally she could handle it, but they were in public, so if she raised a hand to them it could escalate into something ugly real quick. Thankfully, Naruto had no such restrictions and proceeded to mop the floor with them. He walked over and gave a swift kick to the supposed leader of the group. So, you idiots gonna keep bothering Yusaka-chan? Then shook their heads and managed to get back to their feet. Good. Now leave. They quickly ran off, not wanting to anger the white-haired boy again. Naruto turned around and walked over to one of his 3 real friends. You okay? Yusaka flipped her hair with a huff, her long blonde hair swaying in the breeze and violet eyes sparkling. I am absolutely terrible at describing hair, so imagine she has hair like CC from Code Geass. Yusaka was a girl of 10 years old standing at 4'5", wearing an orange t-shirt and a pair of black bicycle shorts under a thigh-length white skirt, finished off with black ninja sandals. I'm fine, you should have let me help. Naruto shook his head and gave her a toothy grin. Ah, then we'd have a mob after us, Yusaka-chan. That wouldn't make for a very fun day, would it? The two continued walking, having been interrupted on their way by the idiots. Yusaka let out a small giggle, then looked over at Naruto, suddenly a bit nervous. Naruto-kun, why do you still hang out with me? I do nothing but get into trouble, people hate me and call me a demon, so why? She truly didn't know other kids her age stayed away from her or left her alone after finding out who she was, but not Naruto. He refused to leave her. Naruto gave her a pointed look. This again? I've told you before, Yusaka-chan, you're my best friend, that's all there is to it. Naruto didn't know why he was so drawn to Yusaka in their early years, but he didn't really care. She needed a friend and he decided to be that friend, no matter what people thought of her, he knew who she really was and he'd stick with her through thick and thin. As they walked, they found themselves at the gates to the Hyuga compound to pick up the third member of their group. The guard have them a smile, Naruto-san, Uzumaki-san, 1 second. He left for a minute before returning with a young Hyuga girl. She had lavender-tinged eyes and short blue hair. She was wearing a simple pair of shinobi pants, sandals, and a t-shirt covered by a beige jacket. Hello Naruto-kun, Yusaka-chan. Hi Hinata-chan. Ready for our training today? Yusaka asked with a smile. Hinata nodded and turned to wave to the guard, thanking him. Naruto-kun, did you get into a fight already? Hinata asked with a bit of disappointment, noticing marks on Naruto's knuckles. Naruto chuckled nervously and scratched the back of his head. Come on Hinata-chan, you say that like I go looking for it. They were picking on Yusaka-chan, what was I supposed to do? He fidgeted at the disappointed look Hinata was giving him. The brunette then smiled and patted Naruto on the shoulder, never change. Naruto just grinned and nodded. Yusaka's eye twitched as she noticed the blush on Hinata's face. Alright then, we'd best get going, sensei will probably be annoyed if we're late. The two others nodded and the three headed off to get the last member of their little group. As they walked, Hinata couldn't help but remember when she met her two friends who saved her life and changed it for the better. Flashback, 4 years prior, Konoha Clan District, midnight. Naruto and Yusaka were walking along the street, having been chased out of the orphanage. Well, Yusaka was chased out and Naruto followed her. Naruto had his arm around the sobbing girl. They people hadn't been nice to her at all. They just decided they had enough of the demon in their orphanage and threw her out into the street. I'm sorry Naruto-kun, you should go back to the orphanage, I'll be fine on my own, you shouldn't be with a demon like me. Yusaka said through her tears, the pain in her voice enough to break anyone's heart. Naruto stopped and hugged her, don't ever say that again. You aren't a demon, I have no idea why people call you that, but I don't ever want to hear you saying that again, okay? He gave her a smile and wiped her tears away. Now come on, let's go see Gigi, I'm sure he can help us, I just hope he's not too upset at us for waking him up late at night. Yusaka nodded and he kept leading her through the streets. As they walked, Naruto and Yusaka suddenly stopped, both of their heads snapped over to the patch of woods near them. Did you feel that? Naruto asked, sensing something wrong. Yusaka nodded, shivering a bit, someone bad is in those trees, I can feel them. She could sense ill intent and whoever it was clearly headed in spades. The two noticed a lot of commotion at the Hyuga compound, people running around and yelling being heard over the walls. Naruto narrowed his eyes and turned toward the presence he sensed, stay here. Then he quickly ran off into the trees. Yusaka yelled after him, but realized he wasn't stopping. She fidgeted for a second, then turned toward the compound and ran over to it. Naruto crept through the trees and eventually found his way to a clearing, seeing a ninja, not one from Konoha, struggling to handle a small girl about his age. She had her arms and legs bound with a cloth over her mouth. Damn it girl, stay still. He slapped her, eliciting a scream from her. Naruto narrowed his eyes and quickly made his way behind the shinobi. Naruto jumped up and wrapped his small arms around his neck, trying to choke him. The shinobi jumped up, dropping the girl, and tried to shake Naruto off. Then when he realized it was only another kid, he reached back and threw Naruto off. Naruto rolled along the ground, then when he came to a stop got back to his feet, making sure to keep his enemy in sight. His opponent groaned upon seeing him. Damn it, I hate killing kids, you just had to play hero didn't you? He said with a sneer. Naruto took a deep breath, then gasped as the ninja suddenly appeared behind him. Naruto quickly dodged a stab from behind, and while the ninja is wondering how he managed to, Naruto threw his fist forward, breaking the ninja's nose. He stumbled back, angered at being hurt by some little kid. When he looked up, Naruto and Hinata were running through the trees. He growled and quickly chased after them. He caught up to them rather easily and tripped up Naruto, causing the two children to roll to a stop. Naruto grit his teeth as the ninja approached them. Like I said, I don't like killing kids, but I'll be damned if I don't pay you back for my nose. Naruto was fully prepared to fight back, even with his little chance of winning. He soon found out he didn't even need to. Someone appeared in front of Naruto and quickly sent a palm strike at the ninja's chest. Naruto heard an unpleasant muffled squelching sound and the ninja fell to the ground, dead. The man turned to them, his Byakugan deactivating. He rushed over to Hinata and untied her, taking the cloth from over her mouth. Hinata, are you alright? He asked with worry. Hinata nodded with a few tears running down her face. I'm okay too Sama, he saved me she said as she hugged her father, looking over to Naruto with a blush. Naruto fidgeted as the man turned his gaze to him. Thank you, my name is Hiashi Hyuga. If it weren't for you distracting him, then Hinata may very well have been lost forever. I am in your debt. The now named Hiashi said with appreciation in his voice. Naruto nodded. It was nothing sir, he would have said more had Yusaka not barreled through the trees and slammed into him. Ah. Yusaka-chan, what are you doing? He asked as she hugged him with enough strength to make him think his bones were breaking. Isaka held on as tightly as she could. You idiot. You could have been killed. Do you have any idea what I would have done if you left me all alone? If I hadn't gone and told the Hyuga what we sensed, you'd be dead. Don't ever do that again. She cried, clearly not intending on letting him go anytime soon. The Ashi found some amusement in the sight and cleared his throat, getting their attention. I thank you both for this, and Uzumaki-san explained the situation to me. You two are more than welcome to stay at the Hyuga compound for as long as you wish. Naruto and Yusaka were both surprised and grateful for his offer. But that, all four of them went to the Hyuga estate for the night to relax after the stressful time. The next few days of political repercussions that followed were definitely not pretty. Hinata needed some help from her two new friends to get over the death of her uncle Hisashi. While Naruto and Yusaka enjoyed their time at the Hyuga compound, they didn't want to impose, so they went to see the Hokage, and he set them up with a nice apartment to share. They had quickly become fast friends with Hinata, with her joining their little group. The three finally arrived at their destination, and a silence fell between them. While they loved their last friend, every time they went to meet her, a somber mood fell over them. The three stood outside the Uchiha clan compound, now devoid of all life but two for the last 2 years. The gate slowly creaked open, and their last comrade made her appearance, Yuuko Uchiha, one of the only two remaining loyal Uchiha in Konoha. Imagine Yuuko Kamishiro from Digimon Cyber Sleuth, just younger. She was wearing a black battle kimono and black sandals. Her blank face gained a small smile at seeing them. Hello everyone, I hope you weren't waiting too long. She said in a soft tone. Yuuko wasn't exactly expressive with her emotions. Her friends had learned to read ours very well, but anyone who just met her would see her as completely cold and stoic. Their meeting with Yuuko was arguably more dramatic than their meeting with Hinata. Flashback, 2 years prior, Hokage Monument. Naruto and Yusaka were on their way up to the overlook on top of the monument, their favorite place to relax. The last few weeks had been hard on the village. The entirety of the Uchiha clan had been totally wiped out by one of their own. Even Naruto and Yusaka couldn't even imagine what the only two survivors must have been going through. They were broken out of their thoughts as they saw someone else at the overlook. Standing very close to the edge. As they got closer, they saw that it was a girl about their age, wearing a black yukata, tear marks staining her face, bags under her eyes, and a dead look to them. Naruto and Yusaka shared a look before Naruto spoke up. Hello, are you okay? The girl turned and glanced at them before returning to looking over the village. Please leave me alone. She looked down to the ground and took a shaky breath. Naruto's brow furrowed as he stepped forward. Well, if you're about to do what I think you are, then I can't do that. She stepped a bit closer to the edge. Don't get any closer. I know what I'm doing. Are you sure about that? I don't think throwing yourself off a mountain will fix anything that you're going through. Yusaka asked, not really knowing what to say. The girl turned to them, with fresh tears welling in her eyes. It'll make the pain stop. I won't have to see it anymore. I won't have nightmares anymore. Yusaka narrowed her eyes. Oh come on, it can't be that bad. You sure you aren't just overreacting? Naruto turned to her and gave her a WTF look. Instead of getting angry like Naruto thought, the girl simply stared at Yusaka. I watched my big brother, who I idolized, slaughter our parents in cold blood, then heard him kill every single other member of my family and torture my brother. Naruto and Yusaka's eyes widened. So that's who she was, Yuuko Uchiha. I keep reliving it every night. That horrible sight replays in my head constantly. So no, I don't think I'm overreacting. Naruto held his hands up to placate her. I'm very sorry for her. She talks before she thinks. Sometimes he walked a few steps closer. I know what happened to you was terrible, but don't you think it's a bit early to go now? You have your whole life ahead of you. You need time to grieve, talk to a therapist, but don't throw it all away like this. Don't you also have a brother? Won't he miss you? She shook her head. He hasn't talked to me since it happened. I have nothing anymore. This pain won't stop, and I can't get the images out of my mind. This is the only way to stop it all. She turned to the cliff, and just as she seemed like she was about to jump, Yusaka spoke up. You're pathetic. Naruto's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates, and even Yuuko seemed surprised. They both turned to Yusaka, who was glaring at her. You're thinking of killing yourself because it's the easy way out. You'd rather die like a coward than live and become stronger. It's pathetic. Yuuko finally showed some emotion as she turned to Yusaka with anger in her eyes. How would you know? What have you gone through in your life? You don't have any idea what I feel, so don't call me pathetic. She raised her voice, and Naruto was about to intervene until Yusaka spoke again. Yusaka had shot forward and grabbed Yuuko by the collar of her kimono. I can call you pathetic because that's what I thought of myself. Naruto stopped and decided to let Yusaka keep talking. Yuuko was surprised at her words. What did she mean? Yusaka kept glaring at her. I can't count the number of times I was in the same position, thinking it'd be easier to end it all than to live in this damn world. Do people call you a demon? Do they beat you, starve you, and curse your very existence? Naruto had no idea Yusaka had actually thought about doing that. She was always so full of life, no matter what happened, that's what they do to me, and if I didn't have Naruto-kun in my life, I would have thrown myself off this mountain years ago. I get it, you feel like nothing will ever make you happy again, like you're drowning in darkness. The light at the end of the tunnel is getting smaller and smaller, and you don't think you'll ever get there. Yusaka let go of Yuuko and backed away a bit. If you want to run away from life then fine, just don't act like you're the only one who suffers. Yuuko stood in stunned silence for a few minutes, and Naruto was afraid things were about to go south very fast. Yuuko's shoulders shook as her tears started flowing freely. I can't. What if I lose everything again? What if I do have a life and family, then they all leave too? I can't do it. Yuuko dropped to her knees sobbing. Yusaka's eyes softened, then get strong enough that nothing can hurt the people you love. You have no clue what life has in store for you, so don't throw it all away. Yusaka held her hand out to Yuuko, hoping she would take it. Yuuko looked up into Yusaka's eyes, her sobbing calming down a bit. Yuuko took Yusaka's hand, then looked over to see a grinning Naruto place his hand on her shoulder. They led her away from the cliff and sat with her for a minute. She eventually fell asleep on Naruto's shoulder. The two jumped when an Anbu with a bear mask appeared in front of them. Nice job you two. I was about to step in and get her away from the edge myself. He chuckled at their surprised look. Hokage-sama isn't stupid. He knew Yuuko and Sasuke would be traumatized by this, so he had us keep a watch on them. Let's go see him, we'll need to get her some therapy sessions set up. He then looked to Yusaka, maybe some for you as well. Yusaka shouted indignantly as the Anbu led them to the Hokage Tower. Present time, Hokage Tower. The four kids knocked on the door to the Hokage's office and after hearing the voice from the other side, walked in. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, looked up from his paperwork and gave them a smile. He made a sign and an Anbu appeared in front of his desk. He had gravity-defying silver hair and a Inu mask. The Anbu looked at them and spoke in a slightly lazy voice, you for sure you can handle this? It's gonna be incredibly tough. He pulled out an orange book and flipped it open, ignoring the girls' annoyed looks. Naruto nodded, you bet we are, Inu-sensei. We can take anything you throw at us. The four had been training with their sensei for about 3 years now, with Yuuko joining after they met her. He was originally one of Yusaka's guards, but decided to give them a few tips, which eventually turned into full-on training sessions every day. Inu had brought it up with the Hokage, and they decided to make use of an old and rarely used law for advanced genin. If a jonin or higher found a group of kids who they thought had potential, the jonin could train them, and once they reached a certain level, they could take a test to become genin without needing to finish or even go to the academy. This was the first day of their real training. Hiruzen chuckled, I have faith that you four will make us proud, just try not to hurt yourselves. He saw all four of them like his own grandchildren, and he truly hoped they could handle this. They were all very talented, but becoming genin so young would put large targets on their heads. Truthfully, this might be for the best. He didn't know how Yusaka would handle the academy, or if the teachers could be trusted to train her accurately. The only one he could trust was Iruka Yumino, who would be teaching them basic school knowledge in addition to their shinobi training. In all honesty, while Yusaka was a special case who definitely needed special attention due to her talent, he couldn't help but feel like Naruto would also need some attention. He and Inu knew there was something special about him. They had at first thought he was royalty. The cloth he was wrapped in when he was left at the orphanage was of the finest quality, something only nobles could afford. They first suspected when they were watching the 2-3-year-olds play in a training ground. They got to talking about business and didn't notice Naruto managing to climb a tree and falling. They turned just in time to see him slam onto the ground on his neck, enough to snap a normal child's neck. However, Naruto was completely fine. He just sniffled a bit and went about his playing. After that they took him to the hospital for a checkup and discovered several amazing things. He was much more durable and much stronger than a normal child his age. The nurses had to work to get a needle into his arm to take a blood sample. Speaking of his blood, the doctors didn't know what, but there was something strange about it. The one thing that stunned them was that he had absolutely massive chakra reserves, a match for even Yusaka, who was a chakra capacity monster. The both of them on their own had cage-level reserves. Of course it was a double-edged sword. They would have to work on control their whole lives. Hiruzen watched them walk away with a smile. One thing was for sure, they would do great things. He could see it already. Training Ground 7, 2 years later. Naruto, Yusaka, Hinata, and Yuuko were sitting in their usual training ground, waiting for their sensei. Today was finally the day they'd be taking their test to become genin. It was a bit surreal to them. The other kids their age would be starting the academy in a week, and they couldn't be more nervous. All they'd done was train with Inu-sensei, so they had no idea how strong they actually were. They were nowhere near being able to beat him. Suddenly, said Anbu appeared in a swirl of leaves. Well, my cute little students, are you ready for your test? They all hopped to their feet and swallowed their nerves, ready to do what they had to do. Inu was soon followed by the Hokage and the Shinobi Council, Inoichi Yamanaka, Tsu Minyazuka, Skikaku Nara, Chauza Akimichi, Shibi Aburam, and Hiashi Hyuga. All the clan heads were fairly excited to see this. An advanced genin test hadn't been done since before their parents were clan heads, and this was a special group, the Hyuga heiress, the Uchiha heiress, potentially, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, and an orphan with incredible talent. Hiruzen also noticed that Danzo Shimura had also decided to turn up to the test. He narrowed his eye at his former teammate. Inu put his book away and dropped into a stance, no gimmicks this time, it's a straight test of your combat abilities, so come at me with everything you have. Inu barely had time to finish his sentence before having to dodge a kick from Naruto. The white-haired boy engaged Inu in a taijutsu battle, throwing everything he had at him. Inu blocked a few hits, then grabbed Naruto's arm and tossed him away, just in time to avoid a Jaiken strike from Hinata. Once Naruto rejoined the battle, Inu quickly realized there were two members of the group who hadn't joined in yet. He knocked Naruto and Hinata away before looking to Yasaka and Yuuko, only seeing a wall of shuriken coming toward him. Hinata quickly dashed to Naruto, who just finished a chain of hand signs, Doten. Doryuheki. A small wall of earth rose up to protect the two from the cloud of metal. Inu sighed and pulled out a pair of kunai to deflect the shuriken he couldn't dodge. As he made his way through the wall of shuriken, he noticed something larger coming toward him. It was Yuuko running through the cloud with two Fuma shuriken, throwing them at Inu, then going through a few hand signs. He dodged one Fuma shuriken and managed to deflect the other. As Yuuko was preparing to launch her technique, Inu heard a pop behind him and turned to see one of the Fuma shuriken turning into Yasaka, who was finishing her own hand sign. Yasaka took a deep breath and blew out a large blast of air, Futen. Tatapa. Yuuko took her own breath and launched out a stream of fire, Kaiten. Ryuken no Jutsu. Inu said to himself as the two attacks collided where he was standing, creating a massive blast of fire. When the blast cleared, Inu was nowhere to be found, and all four of his students quickly sprung into action, not quickly enough unfortunately. Naruto felt something grab his ankle, then groaned as he found himself with only his head sticking out of the ground. Inu pulled himself out of the ground and immediately went on the offensive, taking on the three girls in a taijutsu battle. Naruto grit his teeth as two other Yasaka showed up to help get him out. Yasaka and the others managed to push Inu away, with Naruto joining them a few seconds later. The Shinobi Council was very impressed with what they saw. Damn, they sure don't mess around, do they? Tsu asked. Shibi nodded in agreement, they are genin level from what little we've seen. They possess the ability to come up with strategies quickly and work very well off of each other. Though given Inu-san's heavy lean toward teamwork, I wonder if their individual skills are up to an appropriate level. Hiruzen gave a nod to Inu, who held his hand up to stop his students. Alright, now let's add a little bit of spice to the match. Each of you come at me individually so we can practice one-on-one sparring. Hinata first, then Yuuko, Yasaka, then Naruto last. Inu then reached up and removed his mask. He was wearing a face mask and had a scar over his right eye. His scared eye opened to reveal a single Sharingan. I'll say again, come at me with everything you have, I know you can do more. His four students nodded and stepped back as Hinata moved forward, moving to a unique Jaiken stance. Hiashi gave a small proud smile. Shikaku Nara raised an eyebrow, isn't that the stance Hanako used? Hiashi nodded, Hinata's body wasn't suited to the traditional Jaiken, so I helped her to learn her mother's version. She's grown by leaps and bounds since then. They all watched as Hinata activated her Byakugan and charged at Inu, throwing palm thrusts and poking strikes at an impressive speed. Inu was forced to dodge, even a single strike from her could do major damage, then he managed to grab Hinata's arm and threw her up into the air, throwing a few kunai after her. Hinata thrust a hand out, sending a burst of chakra into the air that knocked the kunai off course. When she landed, she took a deep breath and threw her arms out to the side, a pair of chakra scalpels appearing over her hands. Hinata went back to fighting Inu, who was forced to be even more careful to dodge. Suddenly, Hinata abandoned trying to hit him and jumped up, grabbing Inu's shoulder, using him to vault over. Hinata thrust her palm forward, hitting Inu square in the back, or at least she would have if he hadn't been swapped out with a log. Hinata felt cold steel on the back of her neck. Alright, I think that's enough for now, nice job Hinata. Inoichi let out a whistle, chakra scalpels. Does she want to be a medic? Hiashi gained a fond smile, she's always been interested in medicine, and when she found that technique, she decided it's make a good addition to her repertoire. Yuuko walked over to replace Hinata across from Inu, giving the brunette a small smile. Yuuko took a second to close her eyes and breathe before going through a rapid chain of hand signs, Kaiten. Hasenka no Jutsu. Firing off a barrage of small fireballs. Inu jumped to the side and ran onto the small river in the training ground, then went through his own hand signs, Suiten. Sujin Heki. A wall of water appeared around Inu, blocking the rest of the fireballs. When Kakashi let the water fall, he was greeted with the sight of Yuuko flying toward him with a flaming punch. He blocked it and let out a grunt at feeling the fire burn his arms, then pushed Yuko off. The Uchiha landed on the water, steam coming off the surface as fire chakra appeared in wisps around Yuko. Yuko took a deep breath and the council noticed waves of heat and even a bit of fire exit her mouth as she let the breath go. The Ravenet resumed her fight with Inu, this time small bursts of flame accompanied her kicks and punches. Inu sighed as he once again was forced to only dodge. However, he soon found an opening to grab Yuko's arm. The girl tried retaliating with another punch, which was also grabbed. Gonna have to try something else, Yuko said. Girl allowed a small smile to work its way onto her face, and Inu immediately released her and jumped backward as a large gout of fire flew from Yuko's mouth. Inu raised an eyebrow as he landed. I certainly wasn't expecting that. How long have you been trying to work that out? Yuko blushed a bit. I've been working on it for the past year. Well, you're nearly out of chakra, so let's call this one, alright. Yuko nodded and walked back to her friends, passing Yasaka on the way. The Ashi raised an eyebrow at Hiruzen. That fire technique she used at the end looked almost like the Jaiken. The aged Hokage chuckled, she calls it Hai no Karada. Yuko has an astounding fire nature, the strongest I've ever seen. Unfortunately she has almost no talent in every other element. She changes all the chakra in her body to fire nature chakra and using some theory from Jaiken, creates those fiery attacks. She can also build the chakra in her stomach, not unlike using any other fire jutsu for a blast of fire, like you saw. Tauza gave a hearty laugh. I can already see it, the dragon of Konoha, I like it. Danzo, who had stayed silent the entire time, chose that moment to speak up. How long has she had her Sharingan? Everyone turned toward him with surprise, then looked to Yuko, who was glaring at Danzo with, sure enough, a fully matured Sharingan. Tears inside, Yuko-chan was hoping to keep it a secret for a while longer. She awakened it the night of the massacre. The reason she kept having the incident repeated in her head over and over was that her Sharingan had activated and memorized the entire thing. She still wasn't used to it, nor did she know she could do it until her therapy sessions with Inoichi. Inoichi nodded, taking everyone's attention. Part of her therapy was to confront her memories of that night. I asked her to describe how she remembered feeling. As she talked, reliving the night, I noticed her eyes shifting between black and a dark red. I asked her to channel chakra into her eyes, and there they were. I believe Inu-san is responsible for their growth though. Danzo nodded and went back to watching the spar. Yusaka had been trading blows with Inu for a while, but she quickly disengaged and pulled out a sealing scroll, biting her thumb and activating it. A katana popped out of the seal. It was simple, but of good quality. Yusaka drew it and started battering Inu's kunai with a flurry of blows, pushing the Anbu back. After Inu regained his footing, he started on his own strikes, each of which Yusaka either blocked or deflected. Tsume looked a bit confused. She's playing a bit more defensively than I thought she would. Given her personality I thought she'd be trying to take Inu's head off. The Hokage smirked a bit, her style is normally very aggressive. As if to punctuate his words, after Inu let up for a second, Yusaka went back to hammering him with blows. She likes to wear down her opponent, making them slip up, then when they do, sure enough, Inu's kunai was forced out of his hand and Yusaka thrust her katana forward toward Inu's throat. Inu wasn't an Anbu for nothing however, as he pinned the sword between his palms, forcing it to the side to miss him. Inu kicked her away and jumped back to gain some distance. Yusaka smirked as they threw a pair of shuriken, followed by a few hand signs, shuriken kage bunshin no jutsu. In a puff of smoke, the two shuriken multiplied into dozens. Inu readily deflected them, then dodged a few Uma shuriken, before turning around and grabbing the wrist of the Yusaka it had turned into. Inu tsk''d at her and shook a finger. Did you really think that'd work a second time? Yusaka smirked, nope, but I thought this would. Yusaka started to glow with a white light, bunshin daibakuha. Inu quickly kicked her away as the clone went up in a large explosion, throwing him back a bit. Inu landed hard on the ground and looked up to find Yusaka standing over him with her katana at his throat. He sighed and waved his hand, making Yusaka smirk as she walked back to her team, giving Naruto a high five along the way. Tauza gained an appreciative look. Well, looks like the rumors about her chakra capacity were true. Shibi nodded and turned to Hiruzen. I believe that Naruto is the most interesting one here. He isn't from any known clan, nor does he have the special assets Yusaka possesses, so I'm very curious to see what he can do. The others silently shared his curiosity. Hiruzen was silently thinking, it might be better to just get it out in the open now. Alright, what you're about to see can't be revealed to anyone. We'll want to keep this a secret for as long as we can. As everyone looked to him curiously, Hiruzen called out to Naruto, use them all. No need to hide it anymore. Naruto gained a face-splitting grin at hearing those words. Once it became clear the Hokage wasn't going to elaborate, everyone turned to the field. Naruto started off with an offensive technique, Doten. Doryuso. He slammed his hands into the ground, sending a wave of earth spikes at Inu, who quickly jumped into the air to avoid them. As he was in the air, Inu noticed Naruto smirking as he finished another set of hand signs, Raiten. John. A bolt of lightning shot from Naruto's mouth, headed straight for Inu. Inu's eyes widened before he gripped his wrist, channeling his own lightning chakra into his hand, Rikiri. He used his own lightning-covered hand to deflect the blast away from him, silently cursing himself for teaching Naruto so many ninjutsu. He didn't have time to dwell on it though, as soon as he landed, Naruto was upon him, throwing powerful punches and kicks. Shikaku, who was actually paying attention for once, gave an impressed laugh, not a bad strategy, and he's pretty strong to be able to use a B-class Raiten technique with such precision. Hiruzen chuckled a bit, just wait until you see this. Inu finally managed to fend off Naruto's assault, only to realize there were 5 clones surrounding them in a circle. Naruto quickly ran away, and Kakashi realized all the clones were doing different signs. Oh fuck me. Oten. Doryuso. Raiten. John. Futen. Tatapa. Payton. Kakaku no Jutsu. Suiten. Suiten no Jutsu. Each clone sent a different technique toward Inu, who stood there for a second before they hit. A massive explosion erupted in the training ground as the techniques collided, the council even needing to shield themselves from the wind kicked up by it. After the dust settled, Naruto stood for a minute, wanting to make sure he almost got me. Naruto, if I hadn't substituted with a clone, I could have been in real trouble there. Naruto spun around to see Inu standing there. I can't help but think you went a little overboard though. Naruto gave his own smirk. Well, if it wasn't big and loud, it wouldn't be a very good distraction now, would it? Inu raised an eyebrow, then felt the telltale poke of a kunai on his back. Inu gave a shrug, can't argue with that. Nice work, Naruto. While Inu checked his students over, the Hokage was on the receiving end of some pointed looks. Naruto possesses a very high affinity with all 5 elements. Aya surprised as well. Tsume shook her head in disbelief. That's impossible, to have all 5 natures be that strong. Hiashi crossed his arms, yet we've just witnessed it. Hiruzen gave them all a serious look, especially to the thinking Danzo. This can't be spread around. If this knowledge gets out, Naruto-kun could be in serious danger outside the village walls. Many people would stop at nothing to have someone with his ability. The council all nodded, but Danzo kept his contemplating look. After the 4 were all checked over, Inu stood at attention in front of the council, with his students lined up next to him. Hiruzen walked over to them and cleared his throat. After examining and testing you 4, the council has unanimously decided that you pass with flying colors. He said with a proud smile. Naruto, Yusaka, Hinata and Yuuko all smiled with happiness and pride as Hiruzen reached into his pocket and pulled out 4 Konoha Hittite. I never doubted you 4, and I know you'll make me proud. He handed them their proof of triumph before turning to Inu. I think they've earned a reward, Kakashi. Kakashi nodded with a hidden smile and turned to his 4 new genin. Now that I'm your sensei and will be a regular jonin again, my real name is Kakashi Haddock. Pleasure to finally meet you face to face. Hinata deadpanned a bit. You're still wearing a mask, sensei, said. Anbu gave his signature eye smile. Oh, well, if you want to see beneath it. He reached up to the mask and brought it down to reveal another mask underneath. It's another mask. Isaka's eye twitched. I can already tell this is gonna be annoying. Yuuko smiled a bit and turned to Naruto. Where should we go to celebrate? Naruto thought for a minute. How about ramen? As soon as he said it, Yusaka took off in a blur toward their favorite stand. Hey. No fair, damn it. Naruto said as he ran after her. Kakashi sighed and waved to Yuuko and Hinata. We'd better get there before they eat the Ichiraku family out of house and home. Ichiraku ramen, sometime later. Isaka happily slurped up a mouthful of her favorite food, relishing in the greatness that was ramen. The owner of the stand Tucci brought out Kakashi's bowl and laughed at Yusaka's usual gusto. Eat up you 5, it's on the house tonight, to celebrate out favorite customers growing up. AM walked out of the back with a smile. I can't believe you 4 are genin already. You haven't even set foot in the academy. She gushed as she moved around the counter to give them all a large hug. Oh, it seems like only yesterday Naruto and Yusaka first came in here. The Ichiraku family would always have a special place in Yusaka's heart. They were the first people after Naruto to treat her like a person. Flashback, 7 years ago. The 5-year-old Naruto walked into the ramen stand. He headed up to the counter and spoke to AM. Excuse me, can I have 2 bowls of miso ramen to go please? He asked as he handed her his money. AM was surprised to see him come in all by himself, but figured he lived close by. She took the money with a smile and started on the ramen. As she did, she couldn't help but overhear some things other customers were saying. Isn't that the boy who's always around the demon girl? She must have tricked him into being friendly with her. That poor boy needs someone to set him straight before something bad happens to him. AM noticed the anger on Naruto's face and was about to say something until Tucci walked in. I think we have a rodent problem. I swear I just saw something run behind a dumpster in the alley, he said before going back to the kitchen. AM thought for a minute before turning to Naruto. You can go get your friend, I swear we won't hurt her. Naruto's eyes widened a bit. He stared at her for a minute before leaving the stand. AM sighed, thinking he just left, then he came back, leading a blonde girl his age, who seemed very scared to be there. The customers went dead silent as they noticed Yusaka, who flinched at the attention. Gucci walked back up. What happened? It's quiet as a grave up here. He then noticed AM asking the anxious Yusaka what she wanted to eat as the two kids sat on their stools. When Yusaka noticed him staring, she thought she was about to be kicked out, so she made to hop off the stool. Tucci quickly stopped her. "Oh no, you're more than welcome here. I was just surprised is all." The other customers started making a fuss, calling Yusaka a demon and asking why Tucci would allow her in the restaurant. "Get out, all of you, now. She's a hungry little girl, not a monster. Now leave." The customers were up in arms, but left nonetheless. Yusaka was wide-eyed as she watched the scene. "Thank you." Naruto smiled, happy that they finally had a place they could go that wouldn't kick his friend out. As the five celebrated into the night, Hiruzen sat in his office, preparing for a hard day. He'd promised himself he'd tell Yusaka about her burden and her mother when she became a genin, and now that day had come. He would wait until tomorrow. He didn't want to ruin their celebration. This would be a hard blow to the girl. She'd always wondered who her family was, and he'd had to lie to her every time. She'd suffered so much because of a burden she'd never asked for, and it probably wasn't going to get better anytime soon. Hiruzen sat back in his chair, holding onto a scroll with a Uzumaki seal on it. "I'm getting too damn old for this." The next day, as Naruto and Yusaka were on their way to the Hokage monument, Yuuko was sitting at the dining table of her family home, waiting for her twin to get up. She needed to tell him about her becoming a genin. He knew she trained with friends, but she still hadn't told him about the test or the advanced genin training. She and Sasuke had grown apart after the massacre, and they rarely spoke to each other. Yuuko wanted their brother to pay for what he did, but Sasuke seemed downright obsessed with it. He never wanted to train with her, no matter how many times she invited him. Pretty much the only times they were together were breakfast and dinner. Yuuko would cook something for them, and they'd eat in mostly silence. She had tried to make conversation, asking him about his day, his training, but he'd just grunt and shrug her off. Yuuko didn't want to lose her relationship with her twin, but she was finding fewer and fewer reasons to hold on to it. Sasuke seemed content to train the whole day. He never started any conversations with her. Speak of the devil, Sasuke walked into her room and grunted in acknowledgement. They ate in silence, then after they'd finished Yuuko spoke up. "Sasuke, I need to talk to you about something." Sasuke just grunted. "Not now, we should be training for when we enter the academy." He started for the door. "That's just it, I wanted you to know that I won't be going to the academy." She was about to explain, but didn't have a chance. "What?" Sasuke yelled as he turned around and glared at her. "What do you mean you aren't going to the academy?" Yuuko flinched a bit. "Sasuke, calm down, just let me explain." "Explain what? That you're leaving me to avenge our family by myself?" "That's not what I'm doing, please just listen to what I have to say." He turned back to the door and took a breath. "I don't want to hear your excuses. I should have known this would happen. I can't count on anyone but myself. If you want our family's murderer to go free then fine. Sasuke, I want Itachi to pay as much as you do. I just." Yuuko pleased as she reached out to his shoulder. Sasuke slapped her hand away. "Don't say it." A voice in his head pleaded with him. "If you say it, we might lose our only family left. Maybe you should have jumped off that cliff." He felt a pang in his heart as he said that and walked away. He quickly buried it. He didn't need her. He could do this on his own. Yuuko stood there in her once happy home, her hands over her mouth as tears streamed down her face. She couldn't remain standing and collapsed into a chair, softly sobbing to herself. Hokage's office. Yusaka and Naruto stood in front of Hiruzen. "So, what do you need, Chichi?" Yusaka asked, not liking the melancholy look on the old man's face. Hiruzen sighed and looked her in the eyes. "I'm very sorry, Yusaka-chan, but I lied to you." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, Chichi? Lied to her how?" Yusaka was just as lost as he was. Hiruzen merely handed her a picture. It was of a beautiful red-headed woman with violet eyes. She was wearing a red kimono and was clearly very pregnant. The two stared at it for a minute, Yusaka going through everything she'd asked the Hokage or that he'd told her. She focused on the eyes. Something about them was familiar, then it clicked. They were her eyes, the same ones she saw in the mirror. Yusaka looked at her pregnant belly, then dropped the photo, letting it flutter to the floor. Yusaka's eyes watered as she looked up at Hiruzen. "Is that my Kasan?" At Hiruzen's nod, tears flowed freely from Yusaka's eyes, and Naruto went to hug her. "Why, you told me you didn't know who my parents were. You knew how much I wanted to know, so why?" Yusaka asked through her tears as she clung to Naruto. Hiruzen looked down in shame. "I can never tell you how sorry I am, Yusaka, but it was one of your parents' last wishes. I wouldn't tell you about them until you reached certain ages or ranks. If anything were to ever happen to them, then you were to learn about your mother when you became a genin and your father when you became a chunin." Naruto and Yusaka had moved to sitting on the couch in Hiruzen's office. Why would they do that? Naruto wondered aloud. Your mother was named Kushina Uzumaki, the last living member of the Uzumaki clan. They lived in the nation of Yuzu no Kuni, but were wiped out by a few other villages decades ago. They were feared for their sealing prowess and incredible strength. Since you would be the last Uzumaki if she died, your mother wanted you to be old enough to understand what it meant. Hiruzen paused to let them absorb the information before continuing, as for your father, he had, and still has, many enemies. Enemies who would kill you without a second thought if they knew who you were, so when you make Chunin, or turn 18, I will tell you about him, of that I promise you. Isaka watched as he picked up a scroll, about the size of a summoning contract. It had waves on the border and the Uzumaki seal on the front. This seal was left to you by your mother. It contains all the techniques, Fuinjutsu notes and weapons to be recovered from Yuzu. They belong to you now, Yusaka-chan. Isaka bit her thumb and swiped her finger over the seal, opening the scroll. Her eyes were immediately drawn to a seal labeled Yum. Yusaka channeled some chakra into it and out popped a beautiful katana. Its handle is wrapped in dark purple cloth, the tsuba was in the shape of a five-pointed star, with intricate carvings all over, and the sheath was made of fine lacquered wood, painted black. Yusaka drew the blade from its sheath, marveling at the sword. It was gleaming like liquid silver, but the cutting edge seemed to have the barest purple tint. It's beautiful. Hiruzen nodded, this is Yum, one of your mother's swords. Her other sword, Akumu, was never recovered. He let Yusaka sheath the sword before continuing, as much as I'd love to stop here, there is one more thing to be addressed. The reason people call you a monster. He instantly had Yusaka's attention again. I'm sure you know about the Kyuubi attack 12 years ago. What they don't tell children in school is that the Yondaime couldn't kill the fox, he could only seal it away. Though it's not that simple, the Kyuubi could only be sealed into an Uzumaki, they are the only ones with a strong enough body to contain it. Furthermore, only a child would work, because their body would be able to adapt to the Kyuubi inside them. Hiruzen began. Stop, Yusaka said, it was me, wasn't it? I have the Kyuubi inside me, don't I? That's why everyone hates me. Hiruzen sighed once again, I'm sorry Yusaka, were there any other option the Yondaime would have taken it in an instant. The Yondaime wanted you to be seen as a hero, treated with respect. I felt that people wouldn't think that way, so I tried to keep your status a secret. Unfortunately, someone let it slip. You should know one more thing, your mother was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi before you. Isaka's eyes widened as she held Yum close to her. When a female Jinchuriki gives birth, their seal is weakened. I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what happened, but the Kyuubi broke free, and your mother wouldn't have survived taking it back into herself, so you were their only option. Isaka was silent as she processed everything. She then let out a hollow chuckle, so it's true, I really am a monster. Naruto turned her head to him, no you are not. How many times do I have to tell you to stop saying that? It doesn't matter what you have inside you, you're Yusaka, the Kyuubi is just your tag along. You didn't ask for this, so don't you ever start thinking of yourself as a monster or demon ever again. Yusaka sniffled as her tears returned. She nodded her head as she leaned it onto Naruto's shoulder. As hard as it may be to believe, becoming a Jinchuriki may have been for the best. Seeing their unbelieving looks, Hiruzen elaborated, when you were a baby, you were born with a long-thought incurable and very rare birth defect. You were very weak and frail, even touching you was dangerous. You could barely move and even the slightest touch seemed to bruise you. It was only after a month in the high-security wing of the hospital that you showed improvement. I was running myself ragged trying to get my old student Tsunade Senju to come back and see if she could help you. I thought if anyone could find a way to cure it, she could. However, it wasn't needed. Doctors I trusted confirmed that the Kyuubi was healing you, making you stronger and healthier. When you were 3 months old, you were as healthy, or maybe even more so, as any other child your age. Truth be told, if the Kyuubi wasn't sealed into you, you may not have lived to see your first birthday. Even if you'd lived by some miracle, you would have been in a wheelchair, needing around-the-clock care for most of your life. Isaka and Naruto seemed to be stunned by that. Yusaka was incredibly strong, in more ways than one. If there was one thing that Yusaka hated with a passion, it was being called weak. Anyone who did was met with swift, anger-fueled revenge. Isaka couldn't imagine a world where she couldn't be a shinobi, or one where she would be restricted to a better whole life. Well, maybe the big fox is good for something. Hiruzen took a minute to let them think on everything he'd said. I am sorry for hiding this from you, would you ever be able to forgive me? Naruto and Yusaka looked at each other, with Naruto giving her a reassuring grin. Isaka stood up gripping Yum, I'm still mad at you for lying to me and hiding things from me, but I get why you did it. It was my parents who wanted these things kept from me until now, so I'm more mad at them, not a lot though. Gigi, did they want me? She asked with hesitation. Hiruzen dropped to his knees and put his hands on her shoulders. Yusaka-chan, the day your mother and father found out they were pregnant with you was the happiest day of their lives. They both gave their lives to protect you, and if they could see you now, they would be more proud of you than I could possibly imagine. I can still remember how giddy Kushina was. She didn't want to know anything except that her babies, were healthy. She wanted to be surprised in every way possible. The aged Hokage hugged Yusaka for a minute, then released her. Their bodies were never recovered, but if you want to visit your mother's grave, it's in the clan section of the cemetery. There's a special Uzumaki plot next to the Senju plot. Now, I think this has been a rough time, so why don't you two head home now? Also don't forget to be here for your first mission on Monday. The two nodded and left, Naruto with his arm around the shoulder of the still sniffling Yusaka. Konoha Residential District. Well, today's been kind of a shit show, wouldn't you say? Naruto asked as he and Yusaka walked back to their apartment from the cemetery. They weren't there for long, Yusaka had simply stared at the grave for a minute before leaving in silence. Said blonde nodded, yeah, but at least I know why everyone hates me, and I learned I did have parents, and they really wanted me. She was a bag of mixed emotions, and she was too emotionally exhausted to deal with it. Right now she wanted to sleep. Unfortunately, she wouldn't have the chance as they arrived at their apartment door to find Yuko sitting on the ground next to their door, an all too familiar look in her eyes. Yusaka quickly dropped next to her, Yuko-chan. What happened? Yuko looked over to her with tear stains on her cheeks. I can't go back there, I can't go back to the compound again. Naruto walked over and unlocked their door. You take her inside and take care of her. I'm gonna go get Hinata. We might need her for this. Hinata had taken what they'd call the mom role in their group, always scolding them for things and comforting them. Yusaka nodded as Naruto sped on his way to the Hyuga compound. 20 minutes later found all 4 members of Team 7 sitting in Naruto and Yusaka's kitchen, Yuko slowly sipping at a cup of tea, having just told her teammates what happened between her and her brother. Yusaka was on the warpath and headed for the door. I'll kill him. I'll hang him by his entrails. Yuko quickly grabbed her arm. Please don't, Sasuke is just angry, I'm sure he didn't mean it. I'll talk to him after he's had a chance to cool down. Yusaka sighed but relented. Yuko gave her a small smile and sat back down. I'm sorry to impose, but could I stay with you two for a few days? Naruto took a sip of his own tea. Of course, you can stay here for as long as you'd like. They had no shortage on room, especially since they slept on futons. Their apartment was pretty good sized. The kitchen, dining room and living room were all one large room, with a counter to separate the kitchen from the rest of it and stool chairs on both sides, so it could act as a dining table if desired, which was how they were sat down now. The living room had carpeted floors while the entire rest of the house was hardwood. Speaking of the living room, a large bit of it was taken up by a gray sectional sofa. The two sections were at a right angle to each other and facing toward the rest of the apartment. There were a couple chairs, a coffee table, and a TV. Off the living room was a small hallway leading to the bathroom and a small library study room on the right side and the bedroom on the left. Lastly, the walls were painted a warm cream color. I'll go grab one of the extra futons for you. With that, Naruto headed back to the bedroom. Hinata looked around the apartment for a minute. Now I feel a bit left out. With you three living here and me at the Hyuga compound, she said with play sadness. Yusaka rolled her eyes. Well, you're welcome here too. I've heard of some cases where teams moved in together to bond. Maybe you could convince your two-san to let you stay here for a few days every week. It was clear by the look on Yusaka's face that she wasn't taking no for an answer. The next Monday, the 4 members of Team 7 had all woken up bright and early at 6 a.m. to get ready for their first day as an official team. Yusaka had cooked up a large breakfast for them and they were all ready to meet Kakashi-sensei at the Hokage Tower at 7. They had all finally put their hit-ites on. Naruto's around his right arm, Hinata's around her neck, Yusaka's on her left arm, and Yuko secured to her waist. Once they were all dressed and ready to go, they headed to the Hokage Tower and waited for their sensei. They waited some more. Okay, he was doing this on purpose. After 3 hours of waiting, Kakashi finally showed up, now wearing the standard Jonin uniform, with his eye covered by his headband. Yo. He tilted his head to the side to dodge a stab from Yusaka. Hey now. What's with the violence? Yusaka pointed at him threateningly. You're 3 hours late, what the hell? Hinata, Yuko, and Naruto were also glaring at him. Kakashi merely smiled. Sorry, I guess I got a little lost on the road of life. His student's eyes twitched and he let out a small chuckle. Well, if everyone's ready, then let's head inside and get started. You 4 must have been bouncing off the walls this morning waiting for this. Once they started into the tower, all annoyance at their sensei was lost, their heads now filled with visions of the amazing things they do. Catching a cat, are you serious? Hanahagakure no Sado. Naruto had been hunting his prey for a while now, stalking through the streets and keeping his eyes open for any candidate. Then, after what seemed like hours, he found the perfect mark, so he set to work. He pulled out a scroll and unsealed its contents, carefully crafting his tools and making his plan. He walked over to the edge of a building, calculating his approach, and after seeing his quarry distracted, decided to act. He created a clone and made it henge into a random form, sending it along with its supplies. Naruto held his own weapon and waited for his time. The particularly arrogant merchant was strolling through the Konoha market district as if he owned it, pushing people out of his way and degrading the local stores. He would get his comeuppance though, of that Naruto was sure. Once everything was in place, his clone acted. The merchant yelped and fried as someone threw a balloon filled with neon blue paint at him, covering his back. Ah. Who did that? I demand to know. However, he found everyone was just as surprised as he was. He took a step to track down the vandal, but stepped on a conveniently placed rake, comically flying up and smacking him in the face. He reeled and ended up falling over onto his back. Naruto could barely hold his grin in place as he hefted the pie in his hands, carelessly tossing it into the air for the final touch. There was silence in the market as everyone watched a merchant groan in pain. All was dead silent for a few seconds before a pie fell from the sky and landed square on his face. That did it, the entire market erupted into laughter, Naruto himself having to hold his sides as he cackled like a madman, the pie to the face always gets him. I don't care how old it is, that shit's funny. Naruto spent the next few minutes rolling around on the rooftop before lying on Bis back, watching the clouds as the last few laughs left him. He'd originally started pranking on Kakashi's orders, he called it stealth sabotage training. Really he just wanted them to help him get back at a guy who'd given him a raw deal, but Naruto discovered he had a taste for it. Whenever he had a day off and needed some laughter he'd go looking for some asshole to prank. He had changed a lot in the last 4 years of his genin career. For one thing he'd grown taller, now standing at an even 6 feet tall, and his hair had also grown. His white spiky locks now fell down over his forehead, with the back furling to the back of his neck. Imagine Dangai Ichigo's hair from Bleach as a base. He was wearing a simple white long-sleeved shirt under an open navy blue zip-up jacket with red trim, his hit-8 still tied around his arm. On his lower half, he wore black shinobi pants tucked into a pair of black shinobi sandals. Basically his Naruto. The last outfit, with the mentioned color changes and relocated headband. To finish off his outfit, wrapped around his neck outside the jacket, was the white cloth he was wrapped in when he was left in the orphanage. He'd used some of his mission money to have it turned into a scarf, Naruto supposed he wanted to keep the thing. As Naruto stared up at the clouds, he heard someone clear their voice beside him. Naruto sat up and turned to see Hinata standing there with her 12-year-old little sister, Hanabi. The Hyuga heiress had certainly grown up, all 3 of the girls had become more womanly over the years, but Hinata certainly had more luck. She stood at 5'5", and her hair was now longer, reaching down to mid-back in a Haim-style cut. She was wearing a black and yellow outfit consisting of a sleeveless martial arts top, calf-length black pants, and black shinobi sandals. To top it all off, she was wearing a white jacket with blue trim and the Hyuga emblem sewn onto the right shoulder, her hit-8 around her neck, and black gloves. Her outfit is like Faye from Digimon Cyber Sleuth, just midriff covered, the sandals, and not as conforming to her assets. Hanabi was wearing a simple green yukata as she tried to stifle her own laughter. Hinata gave Naruto a deadpan look, imagine my surprise when I was taking Hanabi-kan to the market on my day off, and I see you pulling another prank. Naruto gained a sheepish grin, ah come on Hinata-chan, if you'd seen this ass. He was cut off as Hinata appeared in front of him and hit him in the chest. Ow. What was that for? He moaned, rubbing the spot she'd hit. The light glare was what answered him as Hinata held her finger up, like she was talking to a child, no swearing in front of Hanabi-chan. How many times do I have to tell you that? Hanabi giggled a bit at their antics, it's not like I don't know what they're saying Wani-chan, plus Yusaka ni is a lot worse than Naruto Nai. Last time she took me to lunch, she taught me a ton of curse words. She then stiffened as Hinata rounded on her with her patented big sister glare. Hinata stood up and placed her hands on her hips, well, you aren't going to repeat any of them, are you? Hanabi quickly shook her head, good. Now then, after we get done at the market today, I need to go have a talk with Yusaka-chan about teaching you to curse. Hinata seemed to realize something as she turned back to Naruto, where is Yusaka-chan anyway? Doesn't she like to help you with these? She went to go talk to Gigi, she wanted to know if her Ka-san left behind any tips on how to use their chains. She's trying to figure out more creative ways to use them. Naruto answered as he resealed his pranking supplies, we're gonna meet at home, then start our little party once Yuuko brings the food, you remembered right? Of course. I wouldn't forget our monthly get-together. After saying that, Hinata felt a tug on her sleeve and looked down to see Hanabi with a hesitant smile. Hinata didn't have a chance to speak before Naruto, of course you're invited to Hanabi-chan, we wouldn't leave you all alone in that stuffy compound. The young Hyuga nodded with an excited smile, maybe next time you and me have some time I can teach you how to pull off stuff like this. Hanabi cheered with a pumped fist as Hinata sighed, rubbing her temples. Well at least you didn't paint the Hokage monument again, she conceded, that was a mess, ninja chasing him and Yusaka all over the village, and the Hokage giving them a stern talking to about vandalizing a tribute to the village's heroes. Naruto shrugged, yeah, that one didn't pan out as well as I'd hoped it would. I like seeing the faces of the people I prank and the people around it. When we did that, I didn't get to savor the faces of all the people who looked at it for the first time. Granted the guys chasing us were pretty hilarious, but it got old real quick. I see I've been thinking of them as just chains, meant for restraining, but I could use them to stab, defend maybe I should think of them more like spears than chains, Yusaka said to herself. She was currently standing in the Hokage's office and had just finished listening to Hiruzen talk about some of the ways her mother had used her chains. Yusaka had grown in height the least of her friends, standing at 5'2", her blonde hair now reached down to her butt and her features had gained a sharp elegance to them. Her temper had more than grown though, it had become legendary to the people who knew her. It took quite a bit to get her completely steamed, but when she was everything within a 5-mile radius got the hell away. She was wearing a modified Maiko outfit with a metal plate from her hit I-8 sewed onto the right side of the chest and a Uzumaki spiral sewn onto the left. Instead of a pair of hakama, she was wearing a mid-thigh length red pleated skirt with a pair of bicycle shorts of equal length, wide open toed stockings that went up to just below the knee, black fingerless gloves, and a pair of sandals like Naruto's. Lastly, Yum rested on her left side, secured with an orange sash. The aged Hokage smiled fondly at her. I have no doubt you'll figure out how to make those chains a valuable weapon. The Kongo Fusa is an incredibly versatile technique and mastering it won't be easy, but I have faith you can do it. The blonde bowed to Hiruzen and was about to leave until someone burst through the door, tossing a kunai at the Hokage. Yusaka quickly drew Yum and sliced it out of the air, then realized it was just made of wood and not even sharp. Then a young boy, about 12, ran into the room. This time I've got you, old man. Yusaka was about to interfere, but he got tripped up on his scarf and fell face first into the ground. Yusaka blinked a few times wondering what was happening before he got up. The boy looked around in embarrassment before his eyes landed on Yusaka, who was just sheathing Yum. Hey, you tripped me. Don't you know not to interfere in a one-on-one battle? Yusaka took Yum from her sash and bopped him on the head with its sheath. You tripped over your own scarf, kid. What are you even doing here? Shouldn't you be in school or something? As she spoke, a jonin appeared in the doorway, wearing the standard uniform minus the flak jacket, a bandana, and round black glasses. Honorable grandson, please don't run off like that. He quickly bowed to Hiruzen, who was somewhere between amused and exasperated. I am terribly sorry, Hokage-sama. I'll endeavor to keep your grandson in line in the future. A delicate eyebrow rose as Yusaka eyed the kid before looking to Hiruzen. This kid's your grandson, Jiji. Hiruzen nodded. Yes, he is. Yusaka Uzumaki, meet Konohamaru Sarutobi, who I believe should be in class right now. The now named Konohamaru crossed his arms. Great, now that she knows who I am, I'm gonna have to deal with the bowing and the apologizing, and his thoughts were cut off as he felt himself get bopped on the head by Yum once more, this time with a bit more force. Yusaka ignored the jonin's shocked panic. If Hokage-sama is your grandfather, then you should understand the importance of his job. Don't go bothering him with pointless interruptions. She turned back to Hiruzen with a little bow. Thank you for your time, Jiji, I'll see you later. With that, the blonde Jinchuriki headed out, leaving the three in the office, though Konohamaru's eyes followed her with curiosity. The jonin bowed to Hiruzen repeatedly. I am so sorry about this, Hokage-sama. I assure you I will take full responsibility for everything and will not let that girl go unpunished for laying hands on the honorable grandson. He rambled for a bit before Hiruzen stopped him. Ibisu, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but Ibisu followed his gaze, finding Konohamaru missing. As he freaked out for a second, Hiruzen sighed. I believe he went out after Yusaka-chan. The now panicking man promptly bolted out of the room. Hiruzen let out a little chuckle. Well, at least my days are never boring. Maybe Yusaka will be good to Konohamaru-kun. His head was then filled with visions of Konohamaru insulting Yusaka and the angry sword-wielding blonde chasing him through the village like a cat with a mouse. Well, at least he'll survive. As Yusaka walked through the village, she became increasingly aware of someone following her, badly. She sighed, she still had a few hours before she was to meet Naruto and Yuko, so what the hell. She turned around and walked over to a box painted like a rock with 2 eye holes and promptly kicked it over, revealing a surprised Konohamaru. Rocks aren't square, nor do they have eye holes. Now why are you following me? Konohamaru got over his surprise and stood, giving her a smirk. You're just as strong as I thought. I want you to train me, and I won't take no for an answer. No. He face faulted as Yusaka walked away, not even sparing him a glance. He quickly got up and followed her. Come on, please. I don't want you to train me all the time, just teach me a few things, please. Yusaka pinched the bridge of her nose. Why do you want me to teach you? Don't you have that jonin as a private tutor or something? She was starting to think this was one of those arrogant kid situations. Because you're the only person who doesn't look at me differently. Okay, maybe she was wrong, everyone treats me like royalty or something because the Hokage is my grandfather, but I hate it. People don't see me as Konohamaru, they just see the Hokage's grandson. You didn't though. You knew who I was, but you treated me like you would of anyone else. I want to get strong enough and become the Hokage so people will know who I am, not who my family is. Ibisu goes easy on me and coddles me, so I need you to train me, please. Isaka stopped and turned to him, there was certainly a fire in his eyes. She stared at him for a minute before continuing her walk. Konohamaru looked down in defeat until he heard Yasaka's voice, "Are you coming? We can't very well train in the middle of the street." Konohamaru looked back up with surprise before it was replaced with a smile and he ran to catch up to her. Training Ground 7. When the two arrived at the training ground, Yasaka turned to her new student. "First things first, a piece of advice from someone who knows a bit of what you're going through. I won't tell you why, but a large number of people in this village think of me as a monster, and they have since the day I was born." Konohamaru's eyes widened. "Well, I don't know exactly how you feel, it's close enough, people don't see Yasaka Uzumaki when they look at me." After seeing his nod and making sure he was listening, Yasaka continued, "There will always be people who see you as your grandfather's grandson, and not you. People will see what they want to see and you can't change their mind. Even if you become Hokage, some will continue to compare you to Hokage-sama." Konohamaru didn't look happy with what she said, but he was still listening. The key to dealing with them is to say simply, "Fuck him." He was clearly taken aback at her choice of words. If they refuse to see you for who you are, then you don't need them in your life and they don't deserve your attention. Instead of trying to make everyone acknowledge you, find the special people in your life who do know you, friends, family, they are the ones you need. As long as you have those few precious people, then you will be more than fulfilled. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? He nodded, then looked up at her with a determined look. "Yeah, I do, but I still want to be the Hokage. Even if people don't acknowledge me, I want to protect my home." Isaka gained a small smile. "There's nothing wrong with that, it's a fine dream. Still, being Hokage is much more difficult than you know, it's not all about strength. Sandaime-sama is the Hokage not just because he's strong, but because he's wise, intelligent, and knows that he needs to do whatever it takes to protect the village. Just keep what I said in mind, okay?" She then turned to the tree line. "You can come out now, I know you're there." Konohamaru jumped as Ibisu dropped into the training ground. "I suppose I shouldn't be surprised you noticed me, many shinobi in this village have been talking about your team's exploits." He said with a small smile before looking to Konohamaru. "I would like to apologize, Honor Konohamaru. I had thought I was just showing proper respect and I didn't notice how much you disliked it. I suppose I wasn't training you to the best of my ability because I was afraid of pushing you too far. How about we start over? My name is Ibisu," he said as he held out his hand. Konohamaru grasped it and shook with a smile. "Konohamaru Sarutobi. Nice to meet you." Isaka smirked to herself. "Well, looks like my work here is done." As she walked away, she called over her shoulder with a wave. "I expect you to have that hat on soon, Konohamaru." Konohamaru waved back at her. "Thanks, Ineki. I'll make you proud." Isaka stopped walking for a second. "Oh, by the way, my team and I are having a little party tonight, you wanna come?" Konohamaru talked with Ibisu for a minute before running over to her. The blonde Jinchuriki headed through the forest toward her home with Konohamaru, content with how her day had gone so far. "Aw, is the kid getting soft?" The blonde girl grimaced as the demonic voice entered her ear. "I have nothing to say to you, Kyuubi. I thought we'd established our relationship last time. You are stuck inside me and will allow me the use of your chakra when I need it to ensure our continued survival. We don't need to banter. Humph, you're no fun, at least I could get a rise out of your mother. I remember our deal perfectly well, kid. I have no wish to die, I promise you, but just remember, if you slip, I'll be right here, all too happy to take over." Kyuubi said from the seal, clearly annoyed at not getting her angry. "You remember, Fox. If you ever try to take me over or hurt my friends, then I'll come into that seal and kill you myself," Yusaka said with a steel edge to her voice. Kyuubi's resulting chuckle was sinister. "I look forward to it." You okay, Ineki?" Konohamaru asked. He'd seen her face become hard and serious as the grave. Isaka shook her head and gave a small smile. "Sorry, just had some unpleasant thoughts drift through my head." Iuko Uchiha was in a pickle. Pickle sounded good. She was currently sitting at a small table and staring at the menu of the Akimichi family barbecue restaurant. There were so many choices, each one looking more enticing than the last. Iuko's mannerisms hadn't changed much, she still didn't talk much, and when she did, it was in a soft, low tone. She had grown to a respectable 5'6", her hair was hanging down to between her shoulder blades, and her features had only improved. Iuko's new outfit consisted of a black and white sleeveless dress with a white fur collar that went down to mid-thigh, with black skin-tight pants underneath. She was also wearing black fingerless gloves, a black and white ribbon around each arm, black ninja sandals, and her hit I-8 around her waist like a belt. Her looks are still based on Yuuko Kamishiro from Digimon. Cyber Sleuth, I just really like the designs in it. I tried to rethink her normal outfit into something more befitting a shinobi, since I couldn't picture her in my head wearing anything else. Hopefully it works, might change it later if it doesn't though. Her musings were interrupted as Joza walked over to her with a knowing smile. Having trouble choosing again, Yuuko-san? Seeing her dejected nod, he chuckled, if you want we can do party orders, they have a bit of everything on them, so you don't have to decide between anything. Ah. That sounds great, thank you Choza-sama. She said as her eyes sparkled. Choza laughed and put a hand on her shoulder, no problem, and please, just Choza when we're out of the official setting. He took on a joking tone as he walked back toward the kitchen, if I didn't know better, I'd swear you were a secret Akimichi. Yuko smiled at the joke before looking around the room while she walked over to the counter near the entrance to wait. Soon however, she heard a small group enter the restaurant, I still don't see why we have to celebrate like this, it's too troublesome a lazy voice drawled. The last female Uchiha turned to the entrance and saw who could only be the second generation Ino Shikacho walk into the restaurant, now sporting brand new hit I-8. It was very surreal for her to know that they probably just passed their genin exams, yet she'd been one for 4 years. Maybe she should go and congratulate Sasuke. Soon, one of the team members noticed her and walked over, hello Yuko. Getting lunch like us? Choji asked with a friendly smile, he had met Yuko a little less than a year ago while she was having dinner and instantly challenged her to an eating match, which he then lost. After that, he seemed to have a bit of a crush on the black-haired girl, though it went away after a bit and they were now on pretty friendly terms. Yuko nodded, hello Choji, I'm just waiting for a party order, my team and I are having a little get-together tonight. While he knew she was a genin, he assumed she graduated a year before them and Yuko simply didn't correct him. She hated to seem like she was bragging, are these the members of your new team? Choji nodded and waved them over, yeah, the 3 of us are Team 10 as of today. We just got out of class and headed here to celebrate, this is Shikamaru Nara and Ino Yamanaka. It's a pleasure to meet you and I look forward to working with you in the future. Yuko said with a little bow. Ino, who had been looking between them for a few minutes, decided to speak up, so, how do you two know each other? She asked with a conspiratory gleam in her eye. I first met Yuko when she was in here getting lunch about a year ago and when I saw her skill, I had to challenge her to an eating competition. Choji explained with a fond smile. Ino seemed mortified and even Shikamaru was surprised, you challenged her to an eating competition Choji what were you thinking? I mean, look at her, that figure is to die for, why would you do that? She then turned to Yuko, speaking of which, what kind of diet are you on, because it must be amazing. Choji lowered his head shame, she bested me. Shikamaru's head snapped up as he stared disbelievingly at Choji, Ino's face much the same, I'm sorry, what was that Choji? The Nara heir asked. The Akimichi heir's fist was clenched, she ate me under the table, I never stood a chance he picked his head up and with fire in his eyes, pointed dramatically at Yuko, however, I have been training. I challenge you once again Yuko, and this time I shall not lose. Yuko merely nodded, okay. 15 minutes later, Shikamaru Nara was a smart guy, hell most people would call him a genius, his ability to process information was second to none in his class. However, the sight that lay before him sent his mind reeling, he couldn't fathom what he'd just witnessed. Choji had fallen back, staring up at the ceiling, barely able to move from the sheer amount of food he'd eaten. However, that wasn't what stunned him, no what got him was the fact that Yuko was still eating. The Revenette finished off another plate of barbecue and put it at the top of a 2-foot-tall stack next to her, I think I'm full now. Ino's jaw was on the floor as she stared at Yuko, who didn't even look like she'd gained anything from it. She couldn't hold it anymore, how in the hell can you possibly eat that much, what kind of insane workout plan do you put yourself through to eat that much and keep that figure? Yuko shrugged, I don't know, I've always eaten like that. I don't do anything extreme in my training, I guess I just have good genes. Ino's eye twitched as she turned away and pouted. Shikamaru sighed, troublesome sorry about that, she gets this way about her appearance. Toza walked over with a large doggy bag, setting it down next to Yuko, there you are Yuko. I have to say, even I'm impressed with how much you can put away. Yuko smiled in thanks and stood up, grabbing the bag, thank you Choza-san, please put the bill for this and the contest on my tab. It was nice meeting you, Shikamaru-san, Ino-san. She gave them a wave as she left, waving to Choza. On her way back to the apartment, she passed the Uchiha compound. As she walked past, the door opened and Sasuke walked out, wearing his new headband, oh, Sasuke. I wanted to congratulate you on graduating. My friends and I are having a party, do you want to come? She asked with a genuine smile. Sasuke didn't spare her a glance and jumped to the rooftops, clearly intent on getting away from her. Yuko sighed, after their little altercation 4 years ago and she'd moved in with Naruto and Yusaka, they'd grown even more apart. Yuko tried to talk to Sasuke, but he always ignored her and refused to acknowledge her presence, because of that, he never saw her hit I-8, which would at least made him talk to her. Yuko knew it wasn't entirely his fault though she should have told him about the advanced genin program, she should have dragged him to therapy with her. He always seemed so strong when they were kids, she thought he just needed time and he'd be alright. She tried to talk to him whenever she saw him and visited him in the compound from time to time, but to no avail. She would have pushed harder to get closer to him, but there was a reason she didn't. She tried to talk to him and be there for him, even before she told him she wasn't going to the academy, but he wouldn't have it. She tried to get back into his life, but he wasn't letting her in, and she wasn't going to force her way in if he didn't want her there. Still, she was going to try talking to him whenever she saw him, and if he decided he wanted to be a family again, she'd accept it with open arms. Yuko shook her head, she needed to get these sad thoughts out of her head, she had a party to get to. Why do I have to do this? Naruto asked as he was forced to carry tons of bags from dozens of stores throughout Konoha. He was currently weighed down as Hinata picked through a clothes rack, taking her time and picking different outfits. 2 reasons, firstly you need to be taught a lesson for trying to pass on your pranking ways to Hanabi-chan. Secondly, you agreed to help us as we went shopping. She said as she held out a dress for Hanabi to look at, what do you think? Hanabi thought for a minute, I don't think orange is your color, that's probably more Yasaka-ni's thing. The smaller Hyuga answered. Hinata looked at the dress for a second before putting it back, yeah, I suppose you're right there. Naruto cleared his throat, I remember agreeing to help you look for some things, but not to be the damn pack mule. He yelped as Hinata appeared next to him and chopped his head, ow. Come on, damn isn't even a real curse. Another chop greeted him as he wisely decided to stop talking. The Hyuga princess looked at all the bags and sighed, alright, let's take pity on poor Naruto-kun and pay, then we'll drop this stuff at home and head to the apartment. Naruto let out a sigh of relief as Hinata walked over to the counter with Hanabi. Thank God for my durability and freakish strength, or my back might be broken, Naruto thought to himself as he carried the massive amount of bags to the Hyuga compound. When the 3 arrived, the guard sent him sympathetic looks and let them in. He set the bags down in Hinata's room as Hiashi walked past, what did he do this time? Hanabi giggled as Naruto rolled his shoulders, he pulled a prank on someone and started cursing. Naruto turned and gave her a mock glare. Hinata patted Naruto on the shoulder, well, not so much for the prank, I agree the man deserved it, more for trying to teach those things to Hanabi-chan. Now what have we learned Naruto-kun? Naruto grumbled to himself, but answered, don't curse around Hanabi-chan or try to turn her to the path of pranking. Hinata smiled and patted his head. Before turning to her father, is it alright if Hanabi-chan goes with us to our party tonight? The smaller girl pulled out her puppy dog eyes technique. Hiashi rolled his eyes, you don't have to do that Hanabi-chan, you're free to go. Just remember to call me if she stays the night. He said, with his last comment directed to Naruto and Hinata. Don't worry Tusan, we'll have her home on time if she's not too tired. With that, the 3 headed off to meet Yusaka and Yuuko, or at least they would have, if they weren't stopped by someone. Having fun with your friends, Hinata-sama. If only we could all be so lucky. Hinata stopped and turned toward the voice, seeing her cousin, Niji Hyuga. Naruto growled, you got something to say Niji, you can say it too. Hinata placed her hand on his chest, stopping him, please Naruto, take Hanabi-chan and head to the apartment without me. She gave him a pleading look. Naruto sighed and gave Niji a glare before leaving with Hanabi. Niji raised an eyebrow, sending your attack dog off, how things have changed. Niji Nai, must we always do this? I've said it more times than I can count, I'm sorry for what happened to Hisashi Oji, but I was 6 years old. Hinata pleaded. I don't care how old you were weak and you always will be weak. It's your fate, just like my fate is to be branded by this seal. I don't know how you lucked out in passing the advanced genin test, but someday we'll see which of us fate favors, and I assure you, I will not be holding back. Niji said coldly as he turned to walk away. Neither will I. Hinata's soft voice barely reached his ears, but when he turned around, she was gone. As Hinata left the compound, she saw Naruto and Hanabi waiting by the wall, I thought you two were heading to the apartment. Naruto shrugged, I wanted to make sure you were okay. Well, thank you. I know you don't like Niji, but he wouldn't just attack me like that. I don't care how long it takes me, I will help him out of that delusion of fate and heal my family. Hinata said with determination. She felt a hand land on her shoulder and looked over to see a smiling Naruto, well then I'll be right there with you. Hinata nodded, a small blush staining her face, Hanabi then grabbed their sleeves, come on guys, we're gonna be late. The two rolled their eyes as they headed off. On the way, Hanabi let go of them, and Naruto fell a bit behind the group, opting to take his time. He stopped as a sharp pain entered his chest, Naruto grit his teeth and put a hand on his chest, damn it's happening again. They're getting more frequent. He held his chest for a minute before the pain subsided. Naruto shook his head, taking a few deep breaths before catching up with his teammate. Team 7's apartment, 30 minutes later. Cheers. Chorused out as the 6 people tapped their glasses together. Team 7, along with Konohamaru and Hanabi, were all taking various spots on the large couch, with the food all spread out along their coffee table, with a couple extra folding trays brought out to hold it all. After they all arrived, they got right to work getting everything all laid out for their little party. By the time they got started, the sun was starting to set. All of them were wearing what they'd call their mission casual clothes. Naruto and Hinata had ditched their jackets, Yusaka set Yum on its rack in their room, and they'd all removed their sandals and gloves, if they had any. Konohamaru seemed nervous at first, but quickly found that Yusaka's team were more than welcoming to him. Naruto sighed to himself as he drank down a few gulps of soda. Shame Kakashi-sensei couldn't be here tonight, that Jonin meeting came out of nowhere. Yusaka waved it off, we'll make it up to him another night, plus you know he's not too much of a party guy. That caught Konohamaru's attention, your sensei. He must be really strong if he taught you. Ibisu said a lot of shinobi know you guys. Naruto nodded with a grin, oh yeah, sensei is really tough. We've been training with him for about 10 years now, and none of us can beat him. Hinata chuckled at Konohamaru's face, well it's to be expected, he is a Jonin after all. When we team up on him he has to take us seriously, but he still manages to pull out a win every time. A younger Hyuga took a sip of her juice and picked up a piece of barbecue. I saw one of their spars once, it was intense. I nearly got sent flying. They spent the next few hours talking about the academy, and Konohamaru eventually asked about some missions they'd been on. Ryuko looked up from her piled high plate, we haven't done anything glamorous if that's what you're wondering. Isaka leaned back in her seat with a sigh, we've done escort missions, delivery missions, bodyguard duty, but nothing really dangerous happened, other than the odd bandit attack every now and again, but they're child's play for us now. Popping a piece of takoyaki into her mouth, Hinata took over for her. Hokage-sama said he wanted to give us low-profile missions, and till our age group became genin as well. If we did higher profile missions while we were still young, we would have had every power-hungry jerk from here to Iowa after us. Konohamaru took on a thinking expression, what do you mean, while you were still young? Didn't you guys graduate last year or something? Naruto sat back down, nope, we've been genin since we were 12, took the advanced genin test. Wyatt Konohamaru screamed as he stared, bug-eyed at them, we talked about that in class a while ago. That test is supposed to be super strict. Nobody's done it in years because no Jonin could find kids with enough potential. Isaka bopped Konohamaru with her hand, stop screaming, you're gonna give me a headache. Kakashi-sensei met us when we were 6 and after teaching us a few things, decided to make it a regular thing. When we turned 12, we took the test and the council approved us. She thought for a minute, speaking of which, does Iruka-sensei teach your class? The boy nodded with a bit of a surprised look, yeah, do you know him? The resident Uchiha answered that one, yes, he was in charge of teaching us stuff like math, history, and geography. Every day after the academy got out, we'd finish out training with sensei and head there to meet Iruka-sensei for a couple hours of school. Konohamaru was silent for a few minutes, then got up with stars in his eyes, you guys have to teach me. Please show me some tricks. Another hand slammed into his ear, Yusaka's smile was a bit strained as a smoking dent appeared in Konohamaru's skull, what did I tell you about yelling Kono-kun? Hanabi was barely able to contain her giggles as Hinata shook her head at their antics, you guys have a lot of fun Wani-chan. Hinata gave her a nod, that we do, Hanabi-chan. A few hours later, I rolled out a couple spare futons for him, they're out like lights, Naruto said as he made 2 pairs of clones, 2 to take the sleeping Konohamaru and Hanabi, and set them down on a spare pair of futons in their room, and 2 to tell their parents. The white-headed boy plopped down on the sofa and sighed in relaxation, it sure had been a wild ride, hasn't it? Hinata took a sip of her tea, if you mean our unique training and careers, then yes, it certainly has. The blonde of the group put an arm around Hinata and poked her cheek, you've certainly grown up, haven't you Hinata-chan? You were so cute when we first met, always blushing and stuttering. The Hyuga heiress's eye twitched as she turned to Yusaka with a sweet smile, what about you? If I remember correctly you rarely left Naruto-kun's shadow, I always thought it was adorable how you held onto him ever so tightly. Lightning seemed to flash between them as they stared at each other. Naruto sweat-dropped as Yuuko sat back down next to him, a freshly made plate of food in her lap. I'll never understand why they do that, they can be best of friends 1 second, then be arguing and competing the next, it's just how they are. Yuuko said with a small smile. Yes so, how was Sasuke? Naruto chuckled as Yuuko turned to him in surprise, you had that look in your eye when you got here. Yuuko sighed, he still won't talk to me, but I'm not going to give up on him. I wasn't going to tell you to. Just remember, if he says anything unfriendly to you again, then come to me and I'll teach him how to speak to his big sister. Naruto growled. Naruto, I'm not even that much older than him, it's only 5 minutes. Yuuko said with an amused look, also, thank you. She always felt nice knowing how protective he was of them. Naruto leaned back with a grin, no problem. Dad. Yuuko snapped as she smacked his hand, which had been moving toward her plate. She finished her food, then walked over to her girlfriends, chopping them on their heads. Isaka blinked and groaned a bit, you know, for all you do, Hinata, I think Yuuko is the real mom of the group. The Uchiha was always breaking up their arguments, with a Sharingan-enhanced glare if need be. Hinata looked indignant, I don't try to be the mom, but someone has to be the responsible teammate. Yuuko looked around at her teammates. What should we do now? We ate all the food. Isaka walked into the kitchen and patted Yuuko's shoulder. You ate all the food, Yuuko-chan. But I know something we can do. She gained a mischievous smirk and channeled some chakra into a seal on her wrist, creating a small puff of smoke. If you guys aren't ready to go to sleep, I have these. She said with a flourish as she held up 2 large bottles of sake. Hinata stood up and stomped over to Yusaka. Absolutely not. We aren't drinking. Where did you even get that anyway? The blonde shrugged, old enough to kill, old enough to buy booze. She then quickly set them down and pulled out 4 saucers. Now come on, now that the kids are asleep, let's get the real party started. How about we don't? Drinking like this is completely irresponsible. Yuuko-chan, Naruto-kun, please help me convince her. Her eye twitched violently as she saw Naruto and Hinata pick up a saucer. Naruto grinned at Hinata. You don't have to if you don't want to, Hinata-chan. We'll have some and put the rest away, it'll be fine. Hinata sighed, fine, but I am not having this. I want you 3 to know that I am completely against this and very disappointed in all of you. She scolded and sat down on the couch, crossing her arms and legs. 1 hour later, you know Yusaka-chan, you're one of my bestest friends in the world, Hinata slurred as she leaned against Yusaka, who was equally sloshed. I really love you, Yusaka-chan, and Naruto-kun too, and Yuuko-chan. Yusaka nodded, I love you too, Hinata-chan, I may give you a hard time, but I love you like a sister. Yuuko, who had her head in the refrigerator, looked up and wobbled over to Naruto. Naruto-kun, we're out of food. We're all gonna starve to death. Alright Yuuko-chan, go find some food, you always seem to find some when there isn't any around. Other Yuuko-chan, inform Jiji of this disaster. Naruto said as he pointed to Yuuko and an empty space next to her. Yuuko gave a shaky salute and went back to the kitchen. Soon, Hinata looked around the apartment. Hey, where'd Yuuko-chan go? Isaka stood up on shaky legs, dragging Hinata with her. I don't know Yuuko-chan, Yusaka called out into the apartment. She then gasped, what if she was captured? Naruto-kun, help us look for Yuuko, she's missing. Naruto downed another saucer of sake and hauled himself up missing. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go find her. He took a step and fell onto the floor. The 2 girls burst into laughter as they held each other up. Naruto-kun, you're so drunk. Yusaka got out through her giggles. No, I'm not. I'm not drunk, I'll prove it. Naruto stood up and his eye caught something on the floor. There. He yelled with an audible gasp. Yuuko-chan's saucer, she must be close. Hinata's eyes widened as she saw it. Wow, he's right. Naruto-kun, you're so amazing at this. She then took a long swig straight from the bottle before passing it to Yusaka, who drank her own large helping. The 3 drunken genin stumbled over toward the kitchen. Yuuko-chan. Yusaka called into the kitchen. Naruto finally turned around the counter. I've found her. He called to his companions, who walked over to see Yuuko curled up in a ball on the floor, sleeping soundly with a smile and a blush on her face as she cuddled a loaf of bread. The male of the group leaned down. Yuuko-chan, we've been searching for you for hours. Come on, we're jetting you home, girl. Just after Naruto finished speaking, he fell forward onto his face. Soon the sound of snoring was audible. Wow, what a lightweight. Hinata said as she poked Naruto with her foot. Isaka nodded. Yeah, well, more booze for us, Hinata-chan. We'll drink all night long. Yeah. The 2 called in unison. 1 hour later, Kakashi Haddock looked around the apartment, surveying the damage. Yuuko was peacefully snoozing with a loaf of bread in the kitchen, her legs huddled up to her chest. Naruto was on his knees with his face planted in the floor next to her. Well, the kitchen was in one piece. He turned his eye to the living room. Yusaka was lying on her stomach over the back of the couch, and Hinata was lying peacefully on her back, covered up and sleeping like a kitten. The only thing to tell you she was hammered was that her blanket was the overturned coffee table. He sighed to himself, well, at least the only thing out of place is the coffee table. Should I take them back to their room? Nah, I let them sleep like this, maybe they'll learn to drink responsibly. He walked over to the door, passing the 1 remaining sake bottle, which was still half full. He blinked before picking it up and leaving with it. When his friend Anko had informed him she'd seen Yusaka buying 2 large bottles of strong sake, he decided that he'd head to the party after the meeting after all. Of course, he'd let them all get sufficiently smashed before going to see the hilarity. Unfortunately, he missed it and was berating himself. The next morning, never again. Naruto and Yuuko were walking to their training ground after dropping Konohamaru off. I swear, I'll never drink like that again, Naruto said to himself as he held his head. Hinata, bless her soul, had gotten rid of most of their hangovers with some medical ninjutsu after they'd gotten dressed. Yuuko nodded, it was pretty bad. I just remember getting tired and going to sleep. I thought I was in my bed. They walked in a comfortable silence until they reached training ground 7, where Yusaka and Hinata were waiting. Hey. You guys drop Hanabi off okay? Yusaka smirked, oh yeah, and Hiashi-sama had a pretty long talk with his daughter about the consequences of drinking. Hinata turned to her with an indignant glare on her face. Excuse me, I spoke out against us drinking. Yeah, and 15 minutes later you were chugging that sake like it was the water of life. Don't go playing innocent with me, you pale-eyed drunkard. Before it devolved into a full-on catfight, Yuuko appeared and gave the both of them her rare Sharingan-enhanced glare. They both settled down as Naruto's sweat dropped. He shook his head, times like this were always entertaining. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He shook for a second before he dropped down to his knees and gripped his shirt. The girls all noticed and ran over to him. Naruto-kun, what's happening? Yuuko asked as Hinata activated her Byakugan and Mystic Palm. Naruto grunted and started breathing heavily. Don't worry, I'm fine, it'll pass soon enough. Misaka got down next to him and looked at him with worry plain on her face. This has happened before, why didn't you tell any of us? I didn't want to worry you all, it's never been this bad before, it usually just hits and goes away after a few seconds. He suddenly fell over, the pain spreading to his legs and arms. This was definitely the worst pain he'd felt, it was like his very bones were on fire. Hinata shook her head with a growl, I can't figure out what's wrong with him. Yuuko, Hinata, go alert the hospital that they've got an emergency patient coming in. Yusaka, inform the Hokage, I'll take Naruto to the hospital. The girls all looked up to see Kakashi standing there. He quickly grabbed Naruto and placed him over his shoulders. What are you waiting for, move. They all scattered as Kakashi jumped way with Naruto. Hang in there, we'll get you better. Whole body hurt, see can't move. Naruto got out through grit teeth. When he got to the hospital, Yuuko, Hinata, and a doctor were already there with a gurney. Place him here. Kakashi set him down and the three followed the doctor down the hallway. What happened and what are his symptoms? Hinata was the one who answered. It started as a chest pain. He was unable to stand after it hit and fell to his knees. I used the Mystic Palm and Byakugan, but I couldn't find anything wrong. He said this has happened before but nothing like this. When I put him on my shoulders he managed to say it spread to his whole body and he couldn't move. Kakashi finished as they arrived at an open room. The doctor grabbed a few nurses and informed Team 7 they'd have to stay outside. They didn't like it, but they complied. After a few minutes, a worried Yusaka and serious Hiruzen arrived. Kakashi, report. Sir, Naruto collapsed after experiencing unexplained pain. It started in his chest and spread throughout the rest of his body. The doctors took him into an exam room a few minutes ago. We haven't heard anything since. Kakashi said in a professional manner. Hiruzen sent a worried look at the girls, who were all sitting down staring at the door. Well then, I suppose all we can do is wait until the doctor returns. Wait they did, for what seemed like hours. Truthfully only one had passed before the doctor opened the door and walked out. Everyone looked to him expectantly. We have no idea what in the hell it was. We used every single diagnostic jutsu, healing jutsu, and everything else we could think of. There were no abnormalities in his blood, he was free of any sickness or disease, there was no poison in his system, he had no injuries. He turned to the Hokage. I'm sorry Hokage-sama, but we have no idea what caused this. About 20 minutes ago, his pain just stopped, he went straight to sleep so we performed more tests, we still found nothing. He's awake now if you wish to see him. The poor doctor was instantly trampled by three worried young women. Kakashi breathed a sigh of relief as he and the Hokage followed the girls into the room, seeing Naruto on the receiving end of three glares. Come on girls, I'm in the hospital, remember? He'd been stripped down to just his pants and was currently shielding himself from the girls. We know, and that's the only reason we aren't beating the hell out of you. Yusaka said as she bashed her fist into her palm. Hinata was giving him a Byakugan enhanced glare. Next time something like this happens, you will tell us immediately. Even Yuuko was glaring at him, the Tomo in her Sharingan spinning angrily. Don't ever make us worry like that again. Naruto leaned away from them, his hands in front of his face. Okay, I'll be more careful, I promise. After the girls calmed down, Hiruzen walked up and gave Naruto a smile. You gave us quite the scare, Naruto-kun. How do you feel? Hey, I'm alright, I told you guys it'd pass eventually. They spent the next few hours talking and relaxing in Naruto's room, with the girls eventually leaving for the night at Naruto's insistence. After they'd gone, Naruto turned to Hiruzen and Kakashi. Alright you two, now that they're gone give it to me straight. Am I dying? The room took on a somber air as Hiruzen sighed. We don't know. The doctor wasn't able to find anything wrong with you, whatever this is, it's never been documented, at least not here. The room was silent as Naruto digested the information. Well, whatever this thing is, I'm not gonna let it kill me, I plan on having a long, healthy life. I'm not gonna get killed by some chest pains. Kakashi put a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Well then you'd better rest, you're gonna stay here for a while until they clear you to leave. So you be good and don't get into any trouble, understand? Come on, sensei. What kinda trouble could I get into in a hospital? At midnight, Konoha Forest. Are you sure they're this way, Yusaka? Yuuko asked as the three jumped through the trees. I'm sure, I can sense them clear as day. Yusaka said back. It was only an hour ago that a call had gone out for all available shinobi to mobilize, the forbidden scroll had been stolen. Apparently it was taken by a group of 4, one of which was Mizuki. Oh, how Yusaka would enjoy taking that prick down. Whenever they went to the academy for Iruka's teaching, Mizuki would always try to sabotage her in some way. Hinata gave a small gasp, her Byakugan blazing. I see them, there's only 3, let's split them up and take them out individually. Mizuki's accomplices were a few reserve shinobi who got tired of being on the back burner. Yuko nodded, I'll interrogate one of them. They eventually came upon the group of traitors, sitting around, clearly waiting for something, possibly their last teammate. Yusaka looked to Hinata and motioned to the left, and Yuko to the right. She then went through a few hand signs, taking a deep breath, Futen. To Tapa. A large blast of air struck the ground in the middle of them, sending 2 of them flying away into the woods, while Mizuki was thrown back into a tree. As he rubbed his head, Yusaka dropped down in front of him, hello Mizuki, I'll be taking that scroll back to Jiji. He seemed to gain a bit of glee in his eyes as he realized who was in front of him. Well, if it isn't the demon speaking of, did anyone ever tell you why? Iubi, I know, you're about 4 years too late asshole. Yusaka said with a smirk. Mizuki had the wind taken out of his sails, but he still pulled out a kunai and charged her. Yusaka sighed and drew Yum. When Mizuki reached her, she deflected all of his blows with practiced ease. Are you sure you're a chunin? She taunted as she coated her blade in Futen chakra and sliced clean through his kunai. Aw, what's the matter, big bad Mizuki can't beat the little Kyuubi bitch. Yusaka had discovered a talent for getting under people's skin, her natural cocky nature seemed to throw people off, make them angry. Mizuki circled her, then grabbed one of the giant shuriken on his back and threw it, arsing through the air toward Yusaka. She quickly gripped Yum, channeling more Futen chakra and slicing it in half as it reached her. She raised an eyebrow at seeing Mizuki charging her again, clearly thinking she wouldn't have time to block him after getting rid of the shuriken. He clearly knew nothing about Yusaka, as she moved faster than his eye could see, she deflected his second kunai and quickly thrust her blade into his neck. Mizuki's eyes widened before the life left his eyes. Yusaka pushed him off her sword, flicked the blood off, then sheathed it, she picked up the forbidden scroll and started on her way back to the Hokage tower, good riddance. Meanwhile, Hinata was dodging the clumsy strikes of one of Mizuki's comrades, are you sure about this? Taking on a Hyuga and Taijutsu. He paused for a second and regretted it as Hinata sent a quick strike to his arm, disabling it. He then made the wise decision to run, unfortunately, Hinata was faster. She appeared above him and struck him in the back of the head with a palm strike, killing him instantly. I refuse to believe these guys are chunin here, I wanted to test my ability. As Mizuki's other unnamed associate shook the cobwebs from his head, he heard a soft voice, please don't resist. It'll be much less painful if you simply surrender. Yuko said as she stood on a tree branch, small waves of heat rolling off her body. He grit his teeth and threw a brace of shuriken at her. Yuko rolled her eyes and dropped off the tree, landing on the ground and sprinting toward him. His eyes widened as Yuko appeared in front of him before she threw a kick, hitting him in the face and sending him spinning through the air. When he landed, he yelped in pain as he realized his face was burned. He pulled himself to his feet and was about to continue, but made the mistake of looking Yuko in the eyes. I'm sorry, but I have to make this quick. Yuko said as her Sharingan spun lazily, now, where is your last teammate? The traitor had a glazed look in his eye as he answered, he went to the hospital to steal some blood samples, as a peace offering to Orochimaru, he was the one we were going to see after defecting. We were waiting for him here. Yuko nodded, chopping him in the back of the head to knock him out, the hospital, well I suppose there's nothing to worry about then. Don't worry sensei, I'll stay out of trouble in the hospital, I promise. Should have known that wouldn't happen, Naruto said to himself as he hopped out of a window. He'd heard someone snaking through the hallway and decided to investigate, finding someone littered with ill intent. Deciding to throw caution to the wind, he threw the guy out a window. As Naruto landed on the ground, his opponent had picked himself up and was settling into his combat stance. Naruto cracked his neck and rolled his shoulders before disappearing in a burst of speed. His opponent didn't even have time to react as Naruto appeared in front of him and threw a punch at his face, then grabbed his ankle as he was flying and threw him into the wall that surrounded hospital grounds. The traitor pulled himself out of the wall and started throwing shuriken at Naruto, who simply made a single hand sign and thrust his other hand forward, Futen. Rapusho. A blast of wind flew from his hand and reversed the direction of the shuriken, forcing the traitor to dodge. After doing so, he noticed that Naruto was gone, he frantically looked around and only realized where Naruto was when a hand popped out of the ground. Doten. Shinju's Anshu no Jutsu. Was heard, muffled through the ground as the traitor was pulled underground, with only his head sticking out. Naruto pulled himself out of the ground with a small smirk, well, that was a nice little warm-up. A few Anbu dropped down, prepared to storm the hospital. Oh, hey. So I assume this guy's who you're looking for. The Anbu started for a second before turning and leaving. Kakashi then appeared in a shunshin and looked around the area, at least you kept the damage to a minimum, well for you at least. You couldn't just stay in bed, could you? Naruto shrugged, what was I supposed to do? I saw this guy sneaking through the place and decided to see what he was doing. Well, I suppose it figures. The others took out the other 3 traitors, and Hokage-sama sent us to stop him. Knowing your ability to get into trouble, Hokage-sama authorized A rank pay in case you took him out. Kakashi smiled as Naruto cheered, now, back to bed with you. Aw, come on sensei. Kakashi shook his head and turned Naruto round, pushing him back into the hospital. Alright, I'm going. Are you sure you're alright Naruto-kun? Yusaka asked as Team 7 walked toward the Hokage Tower for a mission. For the last time, Yusaka-chan, I'm fine. Naruto exclaimed as he patted his chest, fit as a fiddle, not gonna get put down anytime soon. Hinata shook her head, we just worry about you Naruto-kun, and you can be damn sure I'm going to be watching you like a hawk from now on. Her Byakugan was at full blast, and Naruto could tell she was looking over his insides for anything. Naruto jumped as he felt someone poke his chest. He turned back to the front to see Yuuko in front of him, staring at his chest while walking backward. You too, Yuuko-chan. The Revenant poked him again before moving back to her position beside them. I don't want you to get hurt either, Naruto-kun. They continued their walk in silence, none of them wanting to keep their thoughts on the topic of Naruto's problem. Naruto himself took a deep breath, whatever this was, he wouldn't let it kill him, end of discussion. As they reached the tower, they saw Kakashi waiting for them, there you are, ready for a mission. They all nodded and he led them inside. Minutes later, they stood in front of the Hokage, who was looking through the pile of missions. We'll need to keep the easier ones for the new graduates, once they start missions. I do have a C rank that should be simple enough, I feel like your team is more than equipped to handle it. Kakashi nodded and chuckled internally as his team pouted, we'll take it Hokage-sama. Alright then, it's an escort mission, but I want you all to be wary, something seems off about it, Hiruzen said as he tossed Kakashi the scroll. The one-eyed Jonin rolled it open and studied it, his students looking over his shoulder. Nami no Kuni, huh? Should be interesting. Nami no Kuni, huh? Should be interesting, Kakashi said to himself as he looked over the mission scroll. He rolled it up and turned to the Hokage, if you don't mind me asking Hokage-sama, what seems off about this mission? Hiruzen leaned back into his chair, giving Team 7 a serious look, shinobi don't live as long as I do without learning to trust their instincts, and mine are telling me the client is hiding something. I'm not telling you all to treat him with hostility, but be wary and keep your eyes open. Once he was sure they all understood, he called outside, send someone to inform Tazuna-san he has his team, and they'll meet him in 2 hours at the main gate. Kakashi clapped his hands and turned to his students, well, you heard Hokage-sama, go pack your things for a trip. It should take us about 4 or 5 days to reach Nami at civilian speed, so pack for a few days with a few spares. Isaka groaned as the team left, figures we finally get to go on more high-profile missions, and we get stuck with another boring escort mission. Hinata shook her head with a sigh, well not all missions can be exciting, but maybe this one will be more fun than we think. Hokage-sama did think something was up. Yuuko added as she munched on some Pocky from somewhere. Naruto grinned at his teammates, well one thing's for sure, we won't know until the mission gets started. So let's get packed and get ready. 2 hours later, main gate. The 4 genin of Team 7 were awaiting their sensei, thankfully he wasn't late when it came to missions, or they'd never get a good report from the clients. They soon noticed Kakashi walking up with who could only be their client. What? These brats are gonna be protecting me? You've gotta be joking. They rolled their eyes as Kakashi spoke up, I assure you Tazuna-san, my team and I are more than capable of protecting you. Tazuna shrugged, well alright then, my name is Tazuna, and you'll be protecting me on the way to Nami, and while I finish building my bridge. I expect you to do your best. Right off the bat Yuuko noticed something off, why would he need protection while he builds this bridge? Protection on the road I can understand, but why would someone want to hurt him for building a bridge? A glance to her teammates confirmed that they had similar thoughts. Without much else to discuss, the 6 set off toward Nami. Along the way, Hinata decided to start a conversation with their client, so, Tazuna-san, what's Nami like? We've been genin for a while now, but we haven't left Hai no Kuni very many times. Their client seemed to flinch for a second, well, Nami is a trading country, we're not a very big nation, so we rely on the ocean around us for protection. That's why I came to Konoha. Anyway, it's not as impressive as Konoha, but it's home, and we've got to get there in a hurry so I can finish my bridge. Isaka raised an eyebrow, you seem pretty proud of this bridge. Of course, it's going to be my greatest work. It's planned to be one of the biggest bridges in the nations. Tazuna said proudly. Naruto grinned a bit, well, sounds like it's gonna be pretty impressive, I kinda wanna see it now. The 5 members of Team 7 traveled in silence, chatting a bit until they noticed a large puddle off the side of the road, and all shared a look. Tazuna was wondering what they were all looking at, then got even more confused as Kakashi sighed and said, alright go nuts. Tazuna jumped as Naruto and Yusaka charged toward the puddle, both with grins on their faces. Yusaka reached it first and quickly drew Yum, bringing it down on the puddle, mine. The puddle suddenly disappeared as two shinobi jumped out. They were both wearing Mizu no Kuni headbands, rebreathers, and matching clawed gauntlets connected by a chain. Naruto let out a laugh as he saw them jump out. Ha. There's two of them, that means I get one too. Yusaka glared at Naruto, no you don't. I got here first and called it, they're both mine. Oh come on, that's not fair. I wanna fight too. He said as the two turned to each other, ignoring their opponents. Too bad. I called dibs, the fact that two of them popped out is irrelevant, I still get them. Yusaka smirked with a superior look. The two demon brothers sweat-dropped as they watched the genin argue about who would fight them. They looked at each other for a second before rushing toward the two of them, intending on wrapping the genin in their chain. They were suddenly pulled short as their chain was held back. They turned and saw a pair of golden chains coming out of the ground intertwined in theirs. Yusaka turned to them with an annoyed look, fine we can share. As she moved, the demon brothers caught sight of a few chains snaking out of her sleeve and leading into the ground. Naruto gave his own small smirk, there you go. Things are so much more fun if you do them with friends. He suddenly moved to the side as Gozu flew past him, attempting to stab him with his gauntlet. Oh, they can detach the chain, neat. Yusaka was currently blocking and deflecting strikes from Mizu. I noticed seems these guys are more effective as a team than individually. She raised an eyebrow as she took a closer look at the claws on the gauntlet. By the way, they've got poison on the claws. Gozu's eyes twitched as he ran back toward Naruto. Take us seriously damn it. He was stopped short as Naruto grabbed his wrist, sporting a grin that promised pain. Okay, if you insist. He was pulled forward as Naruto crashed his knee into Gozu's stomach, knocking the wind out of him. He followed it up with a punch to the head, knocking Gozu out. Yusaka rolled her eyes at her teammate's actions before moving to the side as Mizu charged her again. A pair of chains shot out of her sleeve and wrapped him up before she calmly walked over and knocked him out with a quick strike to the back of the head with the butt of her sword. Kakashi walked over to them and stared at the two chunin for a second. Yuuko, tie them up, then interrogate them. Hinata, look them up in the bingo book. I need to have a talk with our client. Izuna started to sweat as Kakashi, flanked by Naruto and Yusaka, fixed him with a hard stare. Alright Izuna-san, start explaining. What do you mean? I have no idea who those men are. It was clear to all three of them that he was hiding something. I know you don't, but you know why they're after you. Hokage-sama thought something was off about this mission, and we do as well. Why would you want us to protect you while you built the bridge? Clearly you're afraid of something or someone. Add that, these two chunin should have known better than to attack us, with me being here and my team who clearly knows what they're doing. Unless of course, they were hired to attack us. None of my team have bounties yet and they know I'm way out of their league, so that just leaves you. Kakashi explained with a serious look. Izuna sputtered for a minute, trying to come up with an excuse. It's alright you're right, they were hired to kill me. He sighed and started explaining, Nami is in dire straits. A while ago, a man named Gato showed up and completely took over the shipping industry in Nami. Hinata looked up from the bingo book, the tycoon. Why would he do that? If Nami can't ship anything, then he loses out on a large amount of money. Not if he controls all the ports. He uses mercenaries to make the workers do whatever he wants and controls all the ships coming into and leaving the port. He takes nearly all the profits from the trade industry. Nami is incredibly poor now, people struggling to buy food, children on the streets, homeless. My bridge is the only hope we have of breaking his hold on Nami, and he knows it. Izuna said as he took a seat on a rock. Yusaka tapped a finger on her chin, so that's why these guys were after you with you dead. Gato controls Nami, and nobody can stop him. Izuna nodded, yes I'm sorry I lied about the mission details, but we're all so poor. A C rank was all we could afford, even with most of Nami pitching in. He dropped down and bowed to them, please, you have to help us. I beg of you. Kakashi sighed and turned to his team, Yuuko and Hinata having joined them. Yuuko deactivated her Sharingan, the demon brothers confirmed his story. They also say Gato may have hired a couple other shinobi. They were pretty new, so the only one they knew for sure was there was Zabuza Mamachi. Naruto took a look at the silent Izuna before grinning, well what are we waiting for? We've been craving a high-profile mission, and here one is. Hinata nodded, well, that is true. Isaka's thumb was running over Yum's tsuba. I'd be lying if I said the thought of testing my steel against one of the 7 ninja swordsmen didn't excite me, though they didn't express it. Kakashi could see that the other three shared this sentiment. Yuuko had a rarely seen fire in her eyes, Naruto was popping his knuckles with his thumb, and even the usually gentle Hinata had a gleam in her eye. Kakashi knew they all had an itch to see where they stood in the shinobi world. 4 years of training and staying under the radar had them wanting to test how strong they really are. Kakashi turned to Tazuna, well, looks like we're continuing the mission. Tazuna jumped up with a cheer, count yourself lucky my team is composed of a bunch of bloodthirsty barbarians. He moved his head to the side, dodging a quick strike from Hinata. Well then, if we're all ready, let's get back on the move. I'll have a clone figure out what to do with the demon brothers. 2 days later, back in Konoha. While Team 7 was on their way to Nami, the Rookie 9 were sitting in the Akimichi barbecue restaurant, their sensei deciding it might be nice to get them together before starting missions to have a bit more camaraderie. They probably wouldn't get a ton of time to socialize after they started missions, plus it'd give the sensei a chance to see how the teams interacted. Asuma Saratobi chuckled as he slapped a hand on the shoulder of the man next to him. Cheer up, Yamato. You'll get used to taking care of a team of brats eventually. Yamato sighed and turned to watch Team 11. Sasuke was brooding, Sakura was trying to get his attention, and Sai was being Sai. I know, it's just such a big change from my previous position. Kurenai looked over with a smile. Trust me, Yamato, it'll get easier. As they turned back to their students, they noticed that the conversation had somehow moved to how they passed their tests. Kiba was smirking over at Sasuke, me, Shino, and Yakumo passed Kurenai-sensei's test no problem. I bet we're already on our way to being the strongest genin in the village. Akamaru barked beside him in agreement. Sasuke smirked back, we'll see about that, care to spar like in the academy again? Anytime, any place, pretty boy. Kiba was about to jump up, but settled down as Yakumo grabbed his arm. Please Kiba-kun, don't make a scene. We don't want to get thrown out. The Kurama heiress had really come into her own after her Ido was sealed off, quickly catching up to her peers and making genin rank. As the Inyazukas settled down, Ino took on a thinking pose. You know, I'm starting to wonder which team really is the strongest. I'd normally say Team 11, since Sasuke-kun is on it, and Sai is pretty tough too, but they're totally weighed down by forehead. Sakura's eye twitched as she glared at Ino. Well, what about you, pig? You couldn't fight your way out of a paper bag, and Shikamaru barely moves. Choji is the only fighter, and he wasn't even the best in the class. Choji frowned as he ate more food. I wasn't that bad. Excuse me, what about us? Kiba asked. With me and Akamaru, Shino's Kakechu, and Yakumo's Jinjutsu, we're practically unbeatable. Shino sighed. Why don't we do the logical thing and ask our sensei? The entire Rookie 9, even Shikamaru, turned to the 3 Jonin with expectant looks. They all sweat-dropped and were going to find a way to defuse the argument until Yamato simply said, well, if we're talking about all the genin teams in the village, none of you are. All of them looked surprised at that, except Sai. Yamato didn't see a problem with telling them about Team 7, it wasn't like their existence was some huge secret. Shikamaru groaned a bit, troublesome, so I guess it's Team 7 or 9 that are the strongest. Iruka-sensei said they were still active. Asuma nodded with a relieved smile. Yup, Team 9 is plenty strong, but Team 7 holds the title of strongest genin team. All 4 of them are something else. Kiba seemed confused for a second before getting annoyed. Hold on, they have 4 genin on their team, well no wonder, they win by having an extra person. Kurenai have him a look, causing him to settle down. Team 7 has an extra person because they didn't go to the academy. They took and passed the advanced genin test when they were 12. All was silent for a minute. What? Most of the rookies yelled. Sai already knew about them, Danzo was sure to warn him. Still, he had to keep up his act, they must be incredibly strong then. Yamato nodded. I worked with them a few times before I became a sensei. To help train Yasaka to control the Kyuubi's chakra, but that wasn't for them to know. Let me tell you this, any one of them could soundly defeat any of you. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. I don't care how strong they are, I'd defeat whoever I went up against. The wood user raised an eyebrow. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't phrase that like I should've. All the genin focused back on him, any one member of their team could take on any of your entire teams and win. So if you want to defeat them, you'll need to become much stronger. Sasuke and a number of the other genin were surprised by this, Sasuke in particular didn't look happy. Ino's eyes sparkled at the new gossip she could get from this, so, would we know them? Asuma gazed up at the ceiling, you might. I mean, you could have met them one way or another. But don't go looking for them, they're out of the village on a mission right now. The Rookie 9 all fell silent, thoughts running through their heads of the mysterious Team 7 and what great things they must be doing on their mission. Akanami, Dan, Ken, Pon. Yasaka and Yuuko quietly said as they threw their hands down, Yasaka smirking in victory as her scissors cut Yuuko's paper. The Uchiha heiress didn't have much of a reaction as they continued playing. They silently marveled in the size of the bridge, it certainly was impressive. Team 7 were currently siding in a boat with Tazuna, being ferried over the water onto the small island nation. Naruto turned to Hinata, see anything? Hinata shook her head, seeming staring at nothing. Byakugan active, nothing yet. Wait, she turned to Kakashi, we're approaching the island, the mist is heavy with chakra, it's not natural. Kakashi narrowed his eye as Yasaka and Yuuko stopped their game. Alright, everyone be on guard. Diamond formation around Tazuna and let's go. Once they set down on the beach of Nami no Kuni, they proceeded with caution, straining their senses for anything that could give away an enemy. Suddenly, Naruto pulled out a kunai and tossed it into a bush. A small white rabbit hopped out and scampered off into the woods. "Wait, white. Everyone down." Kakashi yelled as he dragged Izuna to the ground with him. The genin dropped just as an enormous sword flew over their heads, embedding itself into the trunk of a tree. Team 7 watched as someone appeared standing on the handle. He was wearing camo pants, ninja sandals, arm warmers, a leather harness, and bandages wrapped around his face. He turned, showing them his scratched Kiri forehead protector. "Zabuza Mamachi, the Kurigakur no Kijin," Kakashi said as he watched Zabuza closely. "Sharingan no Kakashi, what a surprise, didn't think I'd see you out here with a bunch of brats no less." Zabuza responded as he looked over the team. "Don't suppose I could convince you to hand over the old man?" Naruto grinned, "Not a chance, no brows." Zabuza's eye twitched as he stared. "Do you even know who I am, kid?" "Isaka drew you, we know who you are, so tell me, is the story of you killing 100 academy students before you even got in true?" A dark chuckle escaped Zabuza's mouth as a large amount of killing intent filled the air. "One of the best days of my life, girl." He let out a full-blown laugh as he saw the 4 genin shaking. "Pathetic, just a bit of kai, and they're shaking like leaves." Kakashi noticed their shaking and shook his head. "They aren't scared." Zabuza stopped and raised an eyebrow at him. "I hate to do this, Zabuza. I was a bit excited to fight you as well, but ah well, they'll never forgive me for this if I take the lead." "What the hell are you on about, Kakashi?" Zabuza yelled as he jumped to the ground, grabbing his sword. A silver-haired jonin saluted Zabuza. "I'll be stepping in if things get out of hand." "Go get him." Zabuza's eyes widened as the 4 genin raced toward him, much faster than he thought they could move. Naruto was the first to reach him, and Zabuza was forced to pull his sword up to block a punch. His eyes widened as it forced him back a bit. He didn't have time to dwell on it, however, as Hinata and Yuuko appeared beside him, throwing lightning-fast blows. Zabuza dodged them all, but flinched as the heat from Yuuko's blows threatened to burn him. His instinct screamed at him to dodge, so he jumped back, Yusaka stabbing her sword into the ground right where he was standing. Zabuza hefted his sword. "Alright, maybe you're not just a bunch of brats after all." Hinata smiled as she settled into her stance. "You have no idea." Their opponent turned and slashed his Zanbatsu, blocking a few golden chains and continuing to block them as they tried to get around his guard. He let out a roar and slashed at them, knocking them away. Still, he didn't get away unscathed. A few shallow stabs and cuts littered his body. Ryuko took the opportunity to rush forward. High no Karate activated, throwing a flaming punch at Zabuza's exposed back. Still, he was a jonin for a reason. He ducked down under her strike, watching a gout of fire stream from her fist. Zabuza launched a kick behind himself, knocking Yuuko back. When he rose back up, the 4 genin had disappeared. Zabuza grit his teeth, a grin starting to form under his bandages. "I'm beginning to think this might be fun." He held his sword in front of himself, waiting for them. He didn't have to wait long as Yusaka appeared out of the mist to attack him with a flurry of strikes. Zabuza blocked each of them, then threw out his own strikes whenever Yusaka slowed, the blonde genin dodging around his strikes of deflecting others, sliding his larger sword down her slender blade. Zabuza was actually beginning to enjoy this. He hadn't had a proper Kenjutsu fight in years. However, his battle didn't last long as Yusaka suddenly stepped back, jumping off the lake. Zabuza's eyes widened as Naruto finished a chain of hand signs, smirking devilishly. "Raiden. Denpa," Naruto said with lightning dancing across his hands. He stuck his hands into the water and watched as bolts of electricity danced across the water. Unfortunately, Zabuza had finished his own chain of hand signs. Suiton. Suro. Zabuza was encased in a sphere of water floating above the lake surface. Team 7 raised an eyebrow at the rather ingenious use of the technique. After the lightning stopped and Zabuza let himself out of the technique, he went on the offensive, rushing toward Naruto. Naruto's eyes widened as Zabuza appeared in front of him, slashing him across the chest and sending him flying. Naruto rolled along the ground, groaning as he sat up to rub the shallow cut across his chest. Yuuko then resumed her own assault on Zabuza, Sharingan spinning, sending shots of fire at him with every punch or kick. She was joined soon after by Yusaka's chains, stabbing at Zabuza and trying to wrap around him. Yuuko then went in for a flaming axe kick, which Zabuza blocked. Of course, he didn't notice Hinata slipping in under his nose and sending a strike to Zabuza's arm, disabling it. "Damn it." The jonin grunted as he jumped back, gaining some distance. He glared at his now useless arm, the feeling of pins and needles running through it. Zabuza looked up to see the 4 genin gathered in front of him. He hefted his blade in one hand and prepared to resume the fight. These 4 were certainly a much better challenge than he thought, however. He didn't have a chance as a pair of senbon flew out of the trees and stuck into his neck. His eyes widened as he fell over, the life seeming to leave his eyes. Team 7 watched as a Kiri Hunter ninja appeared next to Zabuza and knelt next to him. "I suppose I should thank you. If you hadn't weakened him, it would have been much harder." The hunter moved to grab the body, but just as he slung Zabuza's arm around his shoulder, he looked up to see Hinata about to hit him with a few Jaiken strikes. The hunter managed to pull a water shunshin just in time, disappearing from the scene. And they got away. Hinata said with annoyance as she walked back to her team, those Senbin put Zabuza into a death-like state. That hunter nin is working for him. Kakashi nodded, I was thinking the same thing. That's why I'll be taking him on next time. He sided his students' affronted looks, don't give me that, I gave you your chance to fight him, next time I will. I'm sure you'll be able to fight whoever else Gato hired. He looked over to Naruto, you alright? It looked like Zabuza got you pretty good. Naruto nodded, flinching as Hinata poked his cut before starting to heal it, I'm fine, it's pretty shallow. I'll need to change my shirt soon though. Their sensei nodded, watching Hinata heal it, it is a shallow cut, but something about it seems off. He shrugged and turned back to Tazuna, Tazuna-san, we should keep moving to your home. The longer we stay out in the open, the more trouble we'll attract. Tazuna nodded, seemingly a bit unable to process the fight he'd witnessed, of course, it's not much farther. An hour later, Team 7 had arrived at Tazuna's house, being greeted by Tazuna's daughter, Tsunami, thank you for agreeing to help us, I can't express my gratitude. Naruto grinned and scratched the back of his head, it's no problem ma'am, really. We couldn't just say no after learning about what was going on here. Team 7 were seated at the family's dining table, Tazuna breaking out a bottle of sake. Kakashi smiled and turned to his students, now, I don't want you three to go getting hammered while we're here. He dodged a swipe from Yasaka. Hinata blushed and fidgeted under Tsunami's shocked look, we've already told you, sensei, we regret drinking so much that night. Yasaka chuckled, I don't, it was fun. Right Yuko-chan. Said Rivanet shrugged, it was pretty entertaining in the beginning, but I don't want to get drunk anytime soon. Naruto chuckled and patted Yasaka's head as she pouted, aw, don't worry Yasaka-chan, we'll find a way to have some fun without booze. Tsunami blinked a bit before shrugging and moving back to the kitchen to make dinner, Tazuna going up to take a nap, and Inari leaving the house to walk around after glaring at them. Yasaka huffed after he left, so what's his problem? Yuko tilted her head a bit, who knows, maybe it's not our place to ask. Tsunami sighed from the kitchen, I'm sorry about him, his stepfather Kaiza stood up to Gato and rallied the villagers against him, Gato publicly executed him a few weeks ago, it was very hard for Inari. He seems to have lost all hope. Hinata activated her Byakugan, watching Inari stare at the water, oh poor thing she shook her head, all the more reason to help these people. Kakashi took on a serious look as he turned back to his team, okay, now to business. We all know that Zabuza is still alive, so we'll have to prepare for it. Being put into a death-like state like that will leave him weak for a while, add to that the Jaiken strike Hinata gave him, plus the wounds from Yasaka's chains. I'd say he'll be out for a week, so we'll need to be ready. He'll probably bring his hunter nin pal and maybe a few other shinobi. Since our job is to protect Tazuna and not kill Gato, we'll be primarily focused on watching Tazuna and his family. Yuko, scout around the house and town, check things out. Yasaka, make a few ninjutsu array around the house, whatever you feel is appropriate. Naruto, check out the side of the bridge, look for traps, explosives, anything dangerous. Hinata and I will stay here on guard duty. With a chorus of hi. Naruto, Yasaka, and Yuko set out. Son of a bitch. Zabuza yelled as he grasped his neck, next time be a little more rough, that could have hurt more. The hunter nin removed their mask, revealing a beautiful face, well, I had to pull them out, and there's no gentle way to do it. The two were sitting in their hideout somewhere in the forests of Nami, I'm surprised a team of genin were able to do this, they must be very strong. Zabuza growled, I underestimated them by the time I knew to take them seriously, they'd already started to overwhelm me speaking of, I want you to be careful around them Haku. The now-named Haku raised an eyebrow, were they that strong Zabuza-sama? The Hyuga and Uchiha and in Uzumaki, the latter two I thought were almost all gone, only reason I know the blonde is in Uzumaki is because I've heard of those chains before, Kiri had a couple scrolls about the Uzumaki clan. Zabuza thought for a second, also, the white-haired one. As Haku bandaged Zabuza's wounds, she pondered her master's words, what's so special about him? He didn't seem too strong to me. Zabuza nodded, just a feeling when he punched the Kubikirabacho it pushed me back, he's pretty damn strong. Secondly, when I slashed him across the chest, I put enough strength into it to bisect a normal man. He just got a shallow cut and launched back from the force of the blow. Maybe he has his own bloodline. Can you think of any clans that he might belong to? Haku asked. The swordsman was silent for a minute, incredible strength, damn near unkillable my sword actually cut him, so it must be something under his skin I've got no damn clue. Damn that white-headed brat he trailed off, no damn way. He can't be one of them, or have that. Zabuza seemed to be talking to himself. Haku was definitely surprised at the sudden change, what? It can't possibly be that bad. Zabuza groaned and sat back into his chair, I don't want to say anything unless I know I'm right. If he's what I'm thinking of, then you need to be careful, as much as it pains me to say it, you won't be able to touch him. I just hope I'm wrong. That night was enough to give even me chills. They were suddenly interrupted by a short man bursting into the room, flanked by two men with swords. Well, imagine my surprise when my men reported seeing Tazuna arriving and Nami alive and well. I thought you'd take care of him, or do I need to hire someone more competent? Hinagato, I've got it under control. Once I'm back up to full strength I'll kill the bridge builder. Now leave, you're bothering me. Zabuza said dismissively. Edo frowned and walked forward, pointing at Zabuza. Now see here, you poor excuse for a mercena. He was cut off as Haku appeared in front of him and stabbed his hand with a senbon. As the short man gasped in pain and recoiled, his two guards drawing their swords, Zabuza-sama told you to leave. So leave. Haku calmly said, her eyes as cold as ice. The three left their hideout, glaring at them. Zabuza chuckled, well, look at that, one little senbon, and he's crying like a bitch. Haku sighed and fixed her master with a deadpan stare, says the man to complain about me or moving them. Zabuza at least had the decency to look somewhat embarrassed. Back at Tazuna's house, Isaka walked into the house, twirling her calligraphy brush in her hand, just one last measure. She sat down at the table and drew a simple sealing formula on it, with the kanji for sound in the center. Fuin. The seal glowed for a second before fading away. There, now if anyone enters the perimeter of the house, this seal will let out an alarm. It's also got a gravity increase countermeasure on it. I'm not quite at the level of a physical barrier seal without my chains, so this'll have to do. Isaka took a minute to look over her brush. It had a simple wooden handle, made from the wood of a sakura tree, and pristine white bristles with a black tip. It was an artifact that had been managed to be saved from Yuzu. This type of calligraphy brush was only used by members of the Uzumaki main family. This last known survivor tucked away in the scroll given to her by Hiruzen. It was special in that it converted one's chakra into ink, eliminating the need for an inkwell. Even despite her fuinjutsu abilities, she was nowhere near being able to solve and recreate the seals on it. Kakashi nodded, alright, nice work. Once the others get back we'll discuss our plans for the week. Speak of the devil, Naruto and Yuuko arrived soon after within a few minutes of each other. The bridge is clear of traps and explosives. I checked all the equipment and every square inch of the bridge, including the pillars underwater. There were a few thugs harassing the workers, but I encouraged them to leave. Naruto said as he sat down with them. Yuuko took her own spot. I looked over the town, it really is as bad as Tazuna said. Kids running around in rags, people stealing left and right. It looks like it's a miracle Tsunami and Tazuna still have food on the table. Tsunami, who'd walked in and overheard her, spoke up, more like luck. I have a garden behind the house where I grow a lot of the food we have, and despite my 2 cents drinking problem, he's always been good at saving money. Still, we can only last for so long. Isaka gave a small smile. Well, on the bright side, you won't have to worry about Gato for much longer. Once the bridge is built he'll be out of luck. The Jonin F. The group cleared his throat, calling attention back to himself. Alright, here's the plan. We'll keep the training light, nothing too strenuous. Keep it limited to things we can do while guarding Tazuna and his family. We'll swap shifts every day, starting tomorrow with Naruto and I guarding Tazuna, the rest of you stay here. We've all got Isaka's seals, so we'll be able to contact each other if we need to. For tonight, let's just focus on getting some rest. A few days later, Naruto rolled his shoulders as he walked through the forest. He groaned at the dull ache in his chest. Well, at least it's getting less painful. They'd been in Nami for a few days, and not much had happened. They'd taken turns guarding Tazuna and his family as per the usual. Naruto decided to go on a walk for 2 reasons. He just needed some air, and he didn't want his friends to notice that his condition was flaring up. Thankfully, this time was nowhere near as bad as before. It was just a dull ache in his chest and body. He decided to rest against a tree, and as the pain subsided, he found himself dozing off. He sat there for a few hours until his sensing ability warned him of someone approaching. He opened his eyes to see a girl in a pink yukata carrying a basket. She looked at him with surprise. You know, you shouldn't sleep out here, you could get sick. Her eyes flicked to his hit. Are you a shinobi? Naruto took a deep breath, his pain gone. Yup, from Konoha. As to getting sick, I never do, sleeping outside won't hurt me a lot. Name's Naruto, what brings you out here into the forest? She gained a small smile. My name is Haku. I'm gathering some herbs for a friend, he was injured a while ago, and I'm trying to help him. Well, as long as I'm here, could you use an extra pair of hands? Naruto asked with a grin, standing up. Haku nodded and the two set to work picking herbs, with Haku giving Naruto some tips on which were the best ones. After a few minutes, she turned to him, Naruto-san, why do you fight? At his questioning look, she elaborated, I believe that when someone has something to protect, they become truly strong. So, why do you fight? Naruto was about to answer, but stopped for a minute. Why did he fight? What reason did he have for becoming a shinobi? He didn't do it to protect the girls, they were all strong on their own now that he thought of it, he didn't really have anything driving his actions. Yuuko wanted to bring her brother to justice and make her family proud, Hinata wanted to head her family and unite them, and Yusaka wanted to become the strongest Uzumaki in history, using their two most feared traits, Kinjutsu and Fuinjutsu. What reason did Naruto have? He'd only become a shinobi because the girls wanted to. Upon thinking about it, he was always following their lead. He trained with Inu because Yusaka wanted to, and he'd taken the advanced genin test because the girls wanted to. He didn't have anything really driving him, he didn't have any family to make proud, he couldn't say he fought to protect his teammates, they helped him just as much as he did them. You know, Haku-sen, I really don't know. I thought I was doing it for a reason, but now I realize, I don't have one. Naruto said as he stared at nothing, deep in thought. Haku stared for a minute. Well, I didn't really have a reason to live when I was a child. My family life wasn't the best and I lost everything, but I found my reason to live. Maybe you just haven't found your reason yet, she said as she put a hand on his shoulder. Naruto nodded as they finished gathering herbs. Well, thank you Naruto-san, these will be a big help. Naruto nodded and watched as Haku walked away. No problem, also tell Zabuza he'd better be ready for another ass kicking. He chuckled as she dropped the basket and spun around, gripping a pair of senbon. I'm a censor, you put up an amazing act, but you can't hide your chakra levels. As she prepared to attack, he put his hands up. Calm down, if I wanted you dead I wouldn't have told you I knew who you were. Haku narrowed her eyes, so why didn't you kill me? Why didn't you kill me? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. You seem like a good person, so I won't hurt you. However, that might be different if we see each other on the bridge at the end of the week. Haku nodded and slowly put her senbon away, picking up her basket and herbs. For what it's worth Naruto-san, I hope you find a reason to fight soon. If you don't, I'll kill you no matter what tricks you pull. With that, she disappeared in a shunshin. Naruto stood there for a minute before starting back toward the house. When he arrived, he found everyone sitting down to eat. I met the hunter Nin. Everyone turned to him in surprise, she was gathering herbs to help Zabuza in a disguise. I sensed who she was and we talked for a bit. Isaka's eye twitched. Let me guess, you didn't take her out. Naruto shook his head. Nope, she seems like a good person and she actually helped me put some things into perspective. Kakashi nodded. Well, so long as you're ready when the time comes. Why are you even trying? They all turned to the side to see Inari staring at them. You're all just gonna die anyway, it's useless fighting against Geto. Yuko tilted her head. We can do it. We're all very capable shinobi. Inari shook his head. You're all so stupid. Nobody can beat Geto, and you all act like nothing is wrong. None of you have any idea what it's like to suffer. You could hear a pin drop as Naruto, Kakashi, and Hinata flinched. They could feel the subtle kai emanating from Yusaka, and even Yuuko's stare became cold and hard. Yusaka was the first to speak. You're a disgrace. Inari and his family were surprised at her sudden change. We don't know what it's like to suffer. I'd imagine that if you lived a single day in my life or experienced the things Yuuko-chan has, you would know real suffering. I won't tell Yuuko-chan's story because it's not my place, but as for me, since the day of my birth, nearly all my home village has called for my death. I've been starved, insulted, and beaten for as long as I can remember. You lost a family member. Would you like to hear about what I'd already went through at your age? Without waiting for an answer, Yusaka stood up and advanced on him, leaning down and staring Inari in the eyes. When I was 5 years old, I was walking with Naruto one night and we were stopped by a group of villagers. They dragged Naruto away to try and save him from me, then started to beat me. They punched me, kicked me, and no matter how much I cried, they kept hurting me. Then, I heard them laugh about doing horrible things to me. One reached for my skirt and I snapped. Yusaka's eyes took on a frigid light, colder than an iceberg. I saw red and felt a burning hot rage fill my senses. I killed them all, I tore them to pieces. Tsunami covered her mouth with a gasp and Tazuna was horrified. I was in the hospital for a long while after that. Therapy and mental training took up a lot of my time. If it wasn't for Naruto-kun visiting me and staying with me, I probably would have broke. I was weak and let those people walk all over me because I was a scared timid girl, so I vowed to never be weak again. So tell me Inari, which one of us doesn't know suffering? Yusaka stood straight and walked out of the house, seething. Yuuko watched her leave, then stood up to follow her. My brother killed our parents right in front of me, then I listened to the screams of pain and fear from the rest of my family, and my relationship with my only other brother is almost non-existent. Your story is tragic, but you'll find that there are many people out there who can match it, and also some whose stories are far worse than you. Be grateful for what you still have. The last female Uchiha left the house as well, going to talk to Yusaka. Naruto decided to leave them be. Yusaka hated it when he saw her emotional, and the only one she would let see her like that was Yuuko. The two had formed a bond after they met, comforting each other when their pasts reared their ugly heads. With the evening taking on a sober tone, the others at the table dispersed, leaving only Tsunami, Tazuna, and Kakashi. Was what she said true? Tsunami asked. Kakashi nodded with a sad sigh, unfortunately, yes I can't say why, but a good portion of the village sees Yusaka as a monster, and it's caused her a lot of pain no child should ever feel. I'm thankful she has Naruto in her life, if he wasn't there I shudder to think what would have become of her. The rest of the evening was spent in silence, all thoughts of dinner gone from their heads. One day before the battle, Hinata sighed to herself as she and Tsunami walked through the streets of Nami. Things at the house were certainly tense after the altercation between Yusaka and Inari, however, it seemed to do the trick as Inari apologized to them the next night. Things were still somber, but it was back to normal after a few days, with Inari being a bit more hopeful. The Hyuga heiress had foiled a number of theft attempts over the course of their trip and also shared some of her rations with any kid she'd seen trying to steal from her, so, do we have much more to do Tsunami-san? The older woman shook her head as they entered a store, she was looking through the nearly empty stalls, this is the last stop, then we can head back. As they finished shopping, they walked back to the house. Once they got there, Hinata's blood ran cold as a seal on the back of her left hand started glowing. She took a look as the seal arranged itself into a message, Naruto incoming. Condition. Hinata's eyes widened as she pulled out her medical bag and threw it down, clearing off the table. Tsunami, take Inari and Tazuna upstairs, I need this area clear. Tsunami didn't know what was happening until the door flew open and Kakashi came in carrying Naruto, who was convulsing in pain. She quickly gathered up Inari and Tazuna, who had come back with the others, and took them upstairs, out of the way. Kakashi set Naruto on the table as Hinata entered doctor mode, what happened, this seems more intense than before. He was fine 1 second, then he suddenly collapsed and started this. We took him here immediately. Kakashi said as Yusaka and Yuuko stood back from the table, worry clear on their faces. Hinata activated her Byakugan, looking him over as she cut off his jacket and shirt, his chakra is going insane, she looked over Naruto again, gritting her teeth in frustration, the doctor in Konoha gave me these in case this happened again. She pulled out a syringe from her back and stabbed it into Naruto's arm, it's a powerful sedative, there's still nothing wrong with him that I can see, so this will at least put him to sleep as Naruto passes out, the pain's still going, Hinata looked even closer, weighed his bones, she quickly ran a diagnostic jutsu and examined his body again, his chakra is seeping out of his coils and coating his bones, it wasn't doing this last time. Or at least not this noticeably. Hinata continued her examination, then Naruto stopped moving, the pain subsiding. Hinata looked closely at his bones, there are dark gray patches on his bones, I still have no idea what this is, but his chakra is clearly the cause I don't know a better way to say this, but if Naruto-kun wants to live, then he'll have to stop using chakra at least until we know what this is. Everyone fell silent as they processed this, Naruto was so powerful, but maybe this was the price without much else to be said. Kakashi took Naruto upstairs to sleep and the girl stayed downstairs to think. After a while, Yusaka went upstairs and into Naruto's room, sitting beside his sleeping form. Yusaka sat there staring at him for a long time, then slowly nodded to herself, taking out her brush and moving Naruto's blanket down, revealing his toned torso. Naruto groaned as he slowly returned to the world of the living, a slight burning sensation on his stomach. Something felt wrong, he tried to flare his chakra, but couldn't, then he panicked a bit as he realized he couldn't sense anything. He bolted upright, his head spinning as he woke up. He looked down and found a freshly painted chakra restriction seal painted on his stomach and chest. He turned to Yusaka, who was staring stoically at him, Yusaka, what the hell, you sealed away my chakra. She nodded and said in a serious tone, yes I did. Hinata said your chakra was somehow causing your incidents, so I sealed it. When we get back to Konoha, you're going to resign from the shinobi program for your own safety. Naruto sat there, stunned for a minute, you can't be serious Yusaka, I love being a shinobi, I love being on our team, I can deal with the pain. Yusaka shook her head, no, this is for your own good. That seal is only coming off with my permission, and I won't give it. I'm going to leave you to rest now, and don't make me seal you into this room, Naruto-kun. Naruto stood up and grabbed Yusaka's wrist, don't tell me to rest, I hate it when people do that. Now Yusaka, you're going to take this seal off right now. Naruto was rarely angry with Yusaka, and this was one of those times. Naruto, you will get back in that bed and stop trying to use chakra if I have to make you. Her voice started to waver, her fists clenched around her brush, I will not let you kill yourself. It's my damn choice, Yusaka. If I want to deal with this pain and keep working with you all then I will, and if I die then so what. Yusaka spun around, and Naruto saw a sight he thought he'd never see again. Yusaka was shaking as tears streamed down her face, she was desperately holding back sobs as she stared at him with a combination of anger and sadness, don't you get it, I don't want you to die. I can't even think about what I'd do if you weren't in my life. Yusaka Naruto started. Hisaka cut him off by throwing her arms around him and hugging him, something she hadn't done in a long time. I know it's selfish, but I am forbidding you to die. You promised me you'd never leave me alone, ever. You swore you'd never break your promise. Flashback. 4-year-old Naruto and Yusaka sat against a tree in the orphanage yard, watching the other kids play. Yusaka hugged her knees to her chest and sniffled a bit. She had just been denied a place in the game for the 100th time. Naruto grinned and put an arm around her shoulder. "Aw, come on Yusaka-chan, we'll play our own game, and it'll be even better than theirs." Yusaka turned to him in tears. "Why do you stick around me? I just get you into trouble, and everyone tells you to leave me alone." "Forget them, they don't know what they're talking about. I'll always be by your side Yusaka-chan. Think you promise?" Yusaka asked as she held out her pinky. Naruto hooked his around hers. "I promise. I'll never, ever leave you alone Yusaka-chan, and I never break my promises." Yusaka gained a bright smile as the two set off to play their own game, ignoring the looks from everyone else. Naruto stared at Yusaka. "Yusaka, I'm not going to die, I promise, so will you please take the seal off?" She shook her head against his chest. "No. You'll die if I do, so promise me you'll just do what I say. Promise me you'll rest and resign for your own good." She stared up at him with bloodshot eyes. "Please." What else could Naruto do? He sighed and resigned himself. "Fine, I'll do it." Yusaka let him go as he got back into the bed. He lied down in silence as Yusaka left the room. As she left, Yusaka ran into Hinata and Yuuko. "I don't regret it," she said with conviction. Hinata sighed. "I know why you did it Yusaka, and I share your motivations, but that was a little extreme." Yuuko nodded. "You used Naruto's feelings against him and manipulated him. I'm all for keeping him alive, but it was his decision. You can't keep him a prisoner forever Yusaka." The blonde narrowed her eyes and walked into the bathroom to clean her face. "I don't care. I'll do anything to keep him alive, even if he hates me." She took a few deep breaths as she stared herself in the mirror. "He already saved my life more times than I can count, in as many ways. I will not let him throw his life away." The next morning, Naruto was sitting in his room, thinking. The rest of the team had left for the bridge, leaving him by himself. As much as he hated it, he knew that Yusaka needed him, and he couldn't go getting himself killed. He vowed he'd never leave her, and that he'd make her happy no matter what, and if this is what it took, he'd endure it. Suddenly, he heard a scream sound from the first floor, and voices. He stood up and made his way down, seeing Tsunami protecting Inari from a pair of armed men. He growled and rushed forward, surprising them and knocking one out. The other didn't even have time to do anything as Naruto grabbed his face and slammed him into the wall. He turned to Tsunami. "Are you okay?" Tsunami nodded in relief. "Yes, but they said that the others were in trouble." Naruto sighed to himself and looked down at his seal. "Screw it," he ran out of the house, telling Tsunami and Inari to hide in the woods. "Damn it, should have grabbed a shirt," he groaned as he ran, shivering. On the bridge, Hisaka grit her teeth as she blocked another volley of senbon, with a few slipping through her guard and stabbing into her. She was currently in the middle of a dome of ice mirrors, fighting the hunter Nin. "I'm not sure where Naruto-san is, but his absence is somewhat of a weight off my chest." Hisaka growled as her chain shot of her sleeves, acting as a shield from some of the needles. She needed to come up with a plan. Her Futon Chakra-infused blade couldn't completely cut through the mirrors, and any gashes she made were quickly repaired. She certainly hoped the rest of her team wasn't having luck as bad as she was. Meanwhile, on another part of the bridge, Kakashi was fighting Zabuza Kunai against Zanbatsu. "Gotta say Kakashi, I was looking forward to a rematch against your brats, but I suppose you'll gave to do." Kakashi stared at Zabuza through the mist, Sharingan spinning. "Well, you might just get that chance when my team takes your associates down." The cold chuckle answered him. "Sorry to say Kakashi, but they won't get the chance. You're down a man, and Haku is just about done playing with your blonde brat. Once she's done, and I'm done with you, the other two will be a piece of cake." Damn it, will these guys just learn their lesson? Hinata asked herself as she blew back another thug with an air palm. She and Yuuko were currently holding off a large horde of Gato's thugs. Well, Hinata was, Yuuko was dealing with her own problem. "Damn it, will you hold still you little bitch," yelled a man with an aim hit I-8 as he swung a lightning sword at Yuuko, who gracefully dodged his strikes. Yuuko carefully watched him with her Sharingan, Aoi Rakusho, former Konoha who stole the Nidame's Raijin and defected to AIM. "I'm sure we'll get a sizable bonus to outpay for taking you down." She dodged a downward swing and kicked him in the chest, sending him flying back. He landed hard and groaned at the burn he'd received. As Rakusho stood up, he grit his teeth. "Alright, time to take you seriously." Before he could move, Naruto leaped over him, springing off his head and running toward the center of the bridge. Hinata shook her head. "Should have known." Yuuko nodded in agreement, settling into the interceptor fist stance. Hopefully he can convince Hisaka to remove the seal. Hisaka took a few deep breaths as she stood up, covered in needles. "Damn you, I swear I'll break these mirrors if it's the last thing I do." Haku brandished a few more senbon. "Please, by all means. By the time you manage, I'll have killed you." She tossed the needles, and Yusaka braced for the pain. "Move, you moron." Naruto yelled as he tackled Yusaka out of the way. The two rolled to the side as the senbon were embedded into the ground where Yusaka once stood. Once the two stood up, Yusaka glared at Naruto in anger. "Why are you here? I told you to rest." She gasped as Naruto grabbed her by the collar and pulled her close to him. "Listen up, Yusaka, because I won't say this twice. I'm gonna keep being a shinobi, and I'm not gonna die. If you really think I'm going to die because of something as stupid as a chest pain, then you don't know me as well as you think you do. Now take this damn seal off or we're both gonna die." Yusaka grit her teeth again as she stared at him, before shaking her head, tears welling up. "Fine. But I'm putting that seal on after this, I still refuse to let you die." Her hand lit up in chakra, focusing on her fingertips. Just before she could unlock the seal, however, a pair of senbon flew through the air and nailed Yusaka in the neck. Naruto was frozen as Yusaka stood for a second before falling over with a loud thud. Naruto stared disbelievingly at Yusaka's wide-eyed, still form. Haku spoke above the silence. "I'm sorry, but I hope you can understand, is this the first time you've lost someone? Well, don't worry, you won't be living with it for long." Everything seemed to slow down for Naruto as he stared at Yusaka. The only thing he heard was the beating of his own heart, then another feeling entered, pure, white-hot pain. He screamed in pain as his condition flared up, worse than ever before. His chakra strained against the seal, burning, agonizing pain filling every bit of Naruto's being. Suddenly, he blacked out. Naruto opened his eyes to find himself standing in an elegant ballroom. It was of the highest quality, like something out of a storybook. Opulent decorations and furniture decorated the place, with a single table sitting in the center, 2 chairs on each side. Naruto looked down at himself to find he was wearing an expensive black suit with a blue button-down shirt, black vest, and black tie, complete with expensive leather shoes. He looked around the room. "Where the fuck am I now? Did I die too? What the fuck?" he thought to himself. Now, there's no need for that kind of language. You're not dead, and I only wish to talk. Not that it really matters, you won't remember any of this anyway." Naruto's eyes snapped to the source of the voice. An almost inhumanly beautiful woman was sitting at the table. She had long brown hair and brown eyes, and was wearing a white ball gown. She gave him a motherly smile and gestured to the other chair. "Please, sit down, Naruto-chan." Naruto hesitated for a minute before walking over and sitting down across from her, keeping his guard up the entire time. She poured some tea for them and drank some. Naruto stared at it, and she chuckled a bit. "It's not poisoned, you have my word." Naruto narrowed his eyes at her. "How do I know your word is worth anything? Who are you and where are we?" She shook her head with a smile. "That's not important, we're here to talk about you, Naruto-chan. I want to talk to you about some things, and your responses will determine whether you live or die." "Yeah, I'd love to, but I gotta go, my friends need me." As Naruto got up and walked away, the woman sighed. "You're very stubborn, you know that. I guess you get that from your mother." That did it. Naruto stopped for a minute before turning around and walking back to the table, sitting down again. "Okay, you've got my attention. So let's talk, also I know your threat is hollow, I'm dying of some disease anyway." She smiled at him. "Oh, it's no disease. It's one of the seals I put on you breaking." Naruto held up a hand to stop her. Whoa. You put seals on me? I haven't seen any, and nobody else has." "Oh, Naruto-chan, if I put a seal on you, nobody would ever find it. Now, this seal is breaking and trying to give you a trait of your mother's it's been holding back. The pain you feel is the seal cracking and breaking, so if I don't remove the seal naturally, you'll die." She shook her head. "Anyway, back to what I was saying earlier, I want to know what drives you, Naruto-chan. To paraphrase Haku-chan, why do you fight?" Naruto stared at her. "You're giving away a lot of information here." She rolled her eyes. "I already told you, you won't remember this. Now don't try to dodge the question again and answer," she said with a small glare. A groan escaped Naruto's throat as he leaned back. "I don't know, I've thought about it a lot over the past few days, but I can't think of anything." "Well, why did you run to the bridge to help them, even though you knew you might die?" the woman asked with a raised eyebrow. "I wanted to help them. Nothing more, nothing less, they're my friends. They don't need me to protect them, but I still want to be there for them," Naruto said, swirling his tea in its cup before taking a sip. She smiled at him. "There are many forms of protection, Naruto-chan. They may not need a knight in shining armor, at least not always, but you mean more to them than you could ever know. So, if you can't live for yourself, then live for them. You're still young, you don't have to have your life and motivations figured out yet." Naruto returned the smile. He didn't know why, but this woman made him relax. "Thanks, that actually helps, so if it's not too much trouble, could you take the seal off and let me go help my friends?" "I'd be happy to, Naruto-chan." He sighed in relief. "Of course, there will be a price." He looked over to her with a raised eyebrow. "In exchange for taking your seal off, someone you know will die. I won't tell you who, but you'll be trading their life for yours." She saw his horrified look. "Well, there's nothing to be afraid of. You won't remember any of this, so there's no harm done." Naruto set his tea down and gave her a hard look, no deal. Seeing her surprise, he kept talking, I can't accept that, I'll kill myself before I take the life of an innocent to save my own. She raised a delicate eyebrow, well, I'm sure you would be better off without some of them. What about Yusaka? She stole your chakra from you, she dared take something that belonged only to you. That chakra is yours, how dare she take it from you? She stood up and glared at him, don't you want her dead for that? Naruto stood up and glared right back, never. I didn't like it when Yusaka-chan sealed my chakra, but I would do anything to never see her in pain like that ever again. Seeing her cry like that after so long tore at me. Knowing that it was me who broke her strong image and made her go back to the side of herself she hated, it made me feel terrible. The woman stared at him in silence. I've made up my mind. I'm going to be there for her, no matter what happens. At least I would've, but now she's dead. I failed her. The woman shook her head. Calm down, drama queen. Haku-chan just put her into a death-like state, you should have realized that. Naruto's head shot up before happiness and relief flooded his face. Oh, thank Kami. You're welcome. She laughed at Naruto's stunned look. Well, I think I know all I needed to know. You're a good boy, Naruto-chan, and I think I'll let you keep one thing from our little talk. Wait, hold on, I have questions about my mother, about you, about a ton of stuff. Naruto said as he moved around the table in front of her. Kami smiled at him and held up a hand to stop him. Remember, you'll only remember one thing from this, right now, you have somewhere else to be, Naruto-chan. Take care of the girls and live a good life. She tapped his forehead and he disappeared. Kami looked around the ballroom, I don't care what you say, Yami-chan, I like him, as a matter of fact, I'll unlock another ability of his, whether or not he figures it out is up to him however. Back on the bridge, Haku watched as Naruto thrashed on the ground in pain, she didn't know what was happening, but she had to end this quickly, she noticed Yusaka twitching, pulling herself to her knees, the senbon having been pushed out by a red energy. Just as Haku was about to finish them off, Naruto stopped moving, and his breathing seemed to stop for a few seconds. Yusaka stared in horror for a minute, and just as she was about to cry out, raw powerful chakra started to swirl around Naruto, Yusaka's seal breaking and disappearing in seconds. The chakra covered Naruto, concealing him as waves of power flowed over the bridge. Suddenly the chakra went away as Naruto stood up, he had no idea what happened, but as he stood, one thing rung in his head in an unfamiliar voice, if you can't live for yourself, live for them. Naruto took a deep breath and looked over to Yusaka, hey, sorry to worry you, but I think I'll be fine now. Yusaka was stunned for a few seconds before she caught sight of something and screamed, look out. Naruto just stood still as a barrage of senbon hit him, the needles barely piercing his skin and falling off. Naruto turned to Haku and smirked, the Hyoten using Kunoichi was beginning to get worried, even more so when 6 dark gray bone-like spikes started growing out of his back, stretching diagonally upward. A small pair of horns grew out of his temples, they seemed to point forward a bit. Imagine baby versions of vast Lord Ichigo's horns. Naruto rolled his shoulders and flexed his arm, a protrusion of the same bone shooting from his hand, making a staff out of bone. Naruto swung it a bit, on second thought, maybe not grabbing a shirt was the best idea, this is weird as hell, and it kinda itches, ah well, I'll figure it out. He turned back to Yusaka, just relax Yusaka-chan, this'll be over in no time. Naruto turned back to Haku, giving a mock bow, so, Haku-chan, would you do me the honor of giving me this dance? Naruto spun his new bone staff around a bit as he and Haku had a stare down. Truth be told, he thought this would be a fair fight, Haku might not be able to hurt him with her senbon, but he wasn't sure he could break her mirrors. Yusaka, put up a barrier around yourself, you're still weak from those senbon, and this could get pretty hot. He flicked his staff as it slammed onto the ground. Yusaka sniffled a bit, trying to hold in her tears at seeing him alive. I don't know what happened to you, but if you lose I'll bring you back to life and kill you again. Her chains shot out around her, forming a dome. A barrier of chakra formed between them, leaving enough space for Yusaka to see through. Naruto shot forward, bringing his staff up. Haku quickly flew from the mirror just as Naruto hit it, the mirror had a large crack in it, and Naruto was smirking in victory, don't get too cocky. Haku said as the mirror repaired itself, albeit a bit slower than last time. Haku quickly brandished more senbon and quickly started flying between mirrors, bombarding Naruto with a hail of needles. Naruto flinched a bit at the sharp sting from the needles poking him, but was very happy knowing they were only penetrating the surface of his skin. They seemed to be at a stalemate, and Haku realized this, so after a few minutes she stepped out of the mirror, and the dome fell to pieces. It looks like we'll have to settle this the old-fashioned way. We're getting nowhere inside my mirrors. As the two squared off, Naruto spoke, so, exactly how did you fall in with Zabuza anyway, Haku? Seeing no harm in the question, Haku indulged him, Zabuza-sama saved my life. Do you know of the bloodline purges in Kiri? At Naruto's nod, Haku continued, my mother was descended from the Yuki clan, and I activated the Hyoten Kekkei Genkai. She told me to never use it, but it was too late. My father was a die-hard supporter of the Mizukage, and he killed my mother. He would have killed me had I not done it to him first. Naruto listened in silence. I was homeless, with nothing to live for until Zabuza-sama found me. He saw my worth and trained me, taking care of me. He always told me I was his tool, his weapon, but he wouldn't give his weapon the last of the food when it meant he wouldn't have any. He saved my life and took care of me when I was weak, so I will do anything to help him. She finished and brandished her senbon. Naruto settled into his stance. I see for what it's worth, I'd rather it didn't have to go this way, Haku-chan. He charged forward, the two clashing staff against senbon. They were evenly matched in speed, but it quickly became obvious that Naruto held an advantage in strength. Haku created a few water clones and resumed their fight, Naruto deftly deflecting and blocking their attacks. Naruto was never more happy that Kakashi made them all learn the basics of the common weapons. He was distracted from his thoughts as Haku appeared next to him and stabbed a senbon into his neck, then jumped up and kicked it, driving it in further. Naruto grit his teeth as he felt the needle pierce slightly through his bone armor, striking a nerve. He swung his staff around, destroying the clones and forcing Haku to move back. Haku prepared her attack as Naruto yanked the needle from his neck. Looks like I can hurt you, what about this, Suiton? Suryudan no Jutsu. A pillar of water shot up from below the bridge and flew toward Naruto, taking the shape of a dragon with glowing yellow eyes. Naruto quickly went on the defensive, holding his staff against his shoulder. Doten. Doryuheki. A wall of earth sprung from the bridge, blocking the dragon. It cracked under the assault, but held firm. Suiton. Sensatsu Susho. Haku called over the roar of the attack. All the water that had flown over the wall formed into deadly needles. They flew toward Naruto with crashing force, making the horned boy gasp in pain as he felt his bones groan under the assault. Naruto quickly created a cage bunshin, and the two went through their own hand signs. Suiton. Musurappa. Raiten. Denpa. The jet of electrified water destroyed the remains of the earth wall and shot toward Haku. The Kunoichi ran through her own long chain of sighs, and once the water got close, she threw her hand forward, frost coating it. Hyutin. Zetterito. She flinched at the shock from the lightning, but her jutsu did its work as the water froze over near instantly, making a huge ice sculpture out of the attack. Haku didn't have much time to make her next move as Naruto's clone appeared behind her, grabbing her in a full Nelson hold. She gasped as the real Naruto jumped over the ice, sliding along it with a hand encased in lightning. Naruto ran toward Haku, gripping his wrist as he did, the lightning carving a trench in the ice as he ran. Once he reached her, he pulled his hand back and thrust forward. Chidori. Haku prepared herself for the pain until the hand stopped just before hitting her. Shigeki. The lightning jumped from Naruto's hand to Haku, shocking her, forcing Naruto's clone to dispel and making her muscles tense up. Once it stopped, Haku's mind was spinning, Naruto's modified Chidori stunning her. Sorry Haku-chan. Naruto said as he threw his other arm forward, punching Haku in the face and breaking her mask, sending her flying across the bridge. Kakashi grew very worried at the large surge of Naruto's chakra that had come from the ice dome. Still, his Sharingan was able to see that he was at least alive in there, so hopefully they'd make it out okay. He then dodged to the side as Zabuza emerged from the mist and tried to bisect him, the swordsman smirking at him below the bandages. He'd managed to give a good number of cuts to his opponent. The smirk disappeared however when the dome fell apart. Well, looks like your apprentice couldn't handle my brats. Kakashi taunted, even as the sounds of fighting reached their ears. Zabuza growled, don't get too confident Kakashi, I don't know why Haku released the technique, but the results will still be the same. He suddenly appeared directly in front of Kakashi, slashing with his Zanbatsu, which Kakashi dodged. He wasn't prepared however, as the Zabuza in front of him turned to water and he felt cold steel against his back. Kakashi dove forward but wasn't able to avoid getting a large slash on his back. Come on, Kakashi, this'll be over in no time if you keep getting distracted. Kakashi narrowed his eyes and pulled out a small scroll. Then I guess I'll need to end this quickly. Kakashi opened the scroll and pricked his finger with a kunai, swiping his blood along a blank section. He then went through a small chain of hand signs before slamming his hand down. Kuchius. Doten. Tsuga no Jutsu. A sealing matrix spread from Kakashi's hand as Zabuza retreated back into the mist. Once the technique ended, it appeared like nothing had been summoned. Well Kakashi, looks like that didn't really pan out like you wanted, did it? Zabuza said, his voice seeming to come from everywhere. The silver-haired Jonin carefully looked around. Actually, it worked just as I planned. Zabuza's eyes widened as he felt something suddenly appear behind him, then they narrowed in pain as a large dog landed on him and bit into his shoulder. It wasn't alone, as more dogs broke through the ground, biting his arms and legs to hold him there. Kakashi walked through the mist to Zabuza, you may be able to hide your presence, but these guys can sniff you out, no matter how good you are at hiding. Especially when you've got my blood on you. Zabuza growled and was prepared for the worst, but their fight was interrupted by Haku flying toward them and rolling to a stop in between them. Naruto then walked onto the scene, helping Yasaka walk, both Jonan's eyes bugging out of their heads at his new look. God damn it, I hate being right, Zabuza lamented. Hinata and Yuuko then joined them, the latter carrying the Raijin. Naruto blinked as he noticed the legendary sword. What happened with you two? Aoi looked around, wondering who just used him like a springboard. He shook his head, turning back to his opponent, who wasn't even paying attention to him. He charged forward, swinging wildly with the Raijin. Yuuko turned back to him and dodged all his strikes, before grabbing his wrist, smoke billowing from it as she burned Aoi's wrist. He growled in pain and pulled out a kunai with his other hand, stabbing toward Yuuko and making her let go. Yuuko returned to her stance. You should give up, the Raijin is the only effective thing you have in your arsenal, and you aren't even good at using it. Her opponent grit his teeth and pulled out an umbrella. Yuuko raised an eyebrow as he tossed it into the air, then her eyes widened as it opened and started raining senbon down on her. She weaved through them, sending out waves of heated air to knock some of them off course. Once she was done she realized Rakusho was in front of her attempting to stab her. Yuuko was getting a bit annoyed at him, so she decided to end it quickly. Yuuko moved to the side and chopped Aoi's burned wrist, making him drop the Raijin. She moved to stand in front of him and placed her fist an inch from his chest. It became wreathed in fire as Yuuko shot it forward. Hurricane. Once her fist made contact, the fire disappeared and Aoi shot backward like a speeding bullet, a short but powerful jet of fire, like a jet flame shooting from Yuuko's fist. Aoi flew backward so fast he slammed into the metal railing and dented it badly. The missing nin was dead, a hole in his chest where Yuuko had hit him. The Uchiha heiress picked up the Raijin and turned to Hinata. Calm down Tazuna-san, you'll be fine. Hinata said to her client as she tossed another thug off the bridge. She only had 5 left and upon seeing that Yuuko was done with her opponent, launched into action, no longer needing to focus on protecting her client. Hinata grabbed the shoulder of the one in front of her, vaulting over him, a palm strike hitting him on the side of his head as she went over. He collapsed as she landed and 2 others ran at her from either side, intending to stab her with their swords. Hinata dropped down onto her knees and leaned back, letting the swords go over her. She then grabbed their wrists and pulled them across, making them stab each other. She quickly jumped up and moved in front of the next one, swiftly breaking his knee with a kick and slamming her palm into the underside of his chin on the way down. She turned to look at the last remaining thug and smiled. He stared for a minute before running like the devil was after him and jumping over the side of the bridge. Well, look at that, one of them has a brain. Yuuko nodded as she looked over the Raijin. Hinata activated her Byakugan and spent a few seconds looking around. We'd better meet up with the others, I think the battle is about over with. Good, I'm hungry. You're always hungry Yuuko-chan. We just fought a few nobodies, you look like you've had an interesting time. Yuuko said, sweat dropping as Hinata was instantly by his side, checking him and Yasaka over. Hinata finished up checking Yasaka. Alright, Yasaka-chan, you'll be okay after some rest. As for you, she said while turning to Naruto, her Byakugan roaming all over his body. I've never seen anything like this, your bone is all that dark gray color and its structure has changed. It looks like it's turned into armor under your skin, guarding your organs and veins like a fortress, while still allowing full range of movement. I know what it is. Everyone turned to Zabuza. I could be persuaded to tell you what I know about it, provided I have your word that Haku won't be harmed. Yuuko, who was busy restraining Haku, spoke up, so, your condition was caused by whatever this is activating. Naruto nodded, I guess so. How exactly do you know about this anyway? What proof do we have you're not lying through your teeth? He asked Zabuza. The Mizukage required everyone to read up on all the Kekkei Genkai in Kiri to prepare for his bloodline purges. So how about it Kakashi, what I know could help him learn to use it a lot quicker. I don't give a damn what you do with me, just let Haku go once this is all over please. The Demon of the Mist said, actually showing a bit of care for someone. Kakashi can't see any deception in Zabuza's eyes. Alright, you have a deal. Now talk. Zabuza smirked beneath his bandages. It's called the Shikatsunyaku and it belonged to the Kagaya clan. The Kagaya were kinda infamous in Kiri, they attacked the village to prove their strength and ended up getting slaughtered. You could say that's what kicked the purges off. Even to the end those psychos were smiling like bloodthirsty monsters if I remember right. The Shikatsunyaku is incredibly rare and the only way to tell if a Kagaya had it was if they had pure white hair. Everyone was silent for a bit. Damn it, I find out about my family and it turns out they're a bunch of crazy assholes, Naruto said to himself. Also that doesn't tell me how to use it. Zabuza cackled a bit. Too bad, you made a deal. Kakashi finally spoke up. Well, as informative as you've been Zabuza, I think it's time to end this. He went through some hand signs and lightning danced across his hand. Zabuza grinned under his bandages, then bring it on, I'm not afraid to die. You just remember our deal or I'll claw my way out of hell and drag you down. Before anyone could move, they were all stopped by the sound of clapping. Everyone turned to see Gato walking toward them with an army of thugs behind him. Well, looks like I can't depend on you for anything, can I Zabuza? He stopped clapping and stood there, smirking at them. Now that you're all weakened from your fight, then these men should be more than enough to take you out. Everyone was silent. Is he serious? Yusaka asked. Zabuza looked back at Kakashi. Well, looks like we aren't enemies anymore, Kakashi, so would you mind? He asked, indicating the huge dog with his head. Kakashi sighed. After all the damn dramatics, alright then, thank you guys, that'll be enough. I'll get you some stuff as thanks when we get back to Konoha, Kai. The dogs all disappeared, Zabuza groaning as he rolled his shoulder and held up his sword. Meanwhile, Hinata was untying Haku and using some smelling salts to wake her up. The Hyoten-using woman jumped to her feet, looking around. Once she saw Zabuza, she ran over to him. Zabuza-sama. I'm so sorry. I'll make this right, I promise. Zabuza waved her off. Calm down, Haku, Gato betrayed us, so we're working with the Konoha ninja now. Haku blinked a bit before turning to see Gato and his army. Oh, she gained a frigid smile. Then I'll make that senbon through the hand seem like child's play. Gato's eye twitched as she watched them talk. Excuse me. How dare you ignore me? That's it, kill them all, and hell, you can keep the girls if you want them. He backed up as his army slowly started forward, confident they could kill the shinobi with sheer numbers. Isaka growled as she stood straight, letting go of Naruto. Red chakra started to flow out of her, turning her eyes ruby red with slit pupils, thickening her whisker marks, and lengthening her canines and nails. She drew Yum and glared at Gato. Alright, he's dead. Haku's eyes widened as she saw the change in Yusaka, remembering one of Zabuza's lessons. Is that or you a Jinchuriki? At Yusaka's nod, Haku gulped. Why didn't you use that on me? Well, I was about to, but then Naruto-kun crashed onto the scene. The blonde said as everyone readied themselves for a fight, so, think this'll take long? Hinata looked at them with her Byakugan. None of them have chakra levels above an academy student. It'll be simple. Ryuko activated her Sharingan, steam flowing off her body. I don't think it'll take very long. She blinked then turned to Kakashi. By the way, sensei, you might want this. I was going to give it to Naruto-kun, but he has his bone weapons now. Kakashi caught the rage Ryuko tossed to him. He looked it over a bit before channeling his chakra into it, a glowing blue blade springing to life with more power than Aoi could ever squeeze out of it. Well, I suppose Nidaime-sama wouldn't mind if I used it just this once. The 7 shinobi readied themselves and quickly rushed forward, Zabuza and Kakashi arriving first in front of the army, swinging their swords and taking out multiple opponents with one swing. Zabuza's Kubikirabacho cleaving through multiple opponents and the Raijin sending out large flashes of lightning. They were soon joined by their students, Haku quickly learning to work with Team 7. She was sending out waves of water needles, taking tons of thugs out of commission. The rest of the team was fighting through the army with relative ease. It was soon becoming clear to Gato that his army was being slaughtered and he made a break for it. He was stopped however by Naruto standing in front of him. The white-headed teen was leaning on his staff, smirking at Gato. Between his horns and devilish smirk, he looked like the devil himself. So, where do we think we're going? What was that you said about letting your thugs do whatever they want with the girls? As Gato tried to beg for his life, the rest of the ninjas showed up, having cleared out the rest of the army. Please, I can give you whatever you want. Money, women, anything, I swear. Naruto rolled his eyes and spun his staff, which snapped in half and started crumbling to ash. Naruto raised an eyebrow, but shrugged. Hinata walked over and watched it crumble with him. Interesting, looks like if they aren't connected to you like your spikes or horns, they turn to ash after a while. We'll have to test that. Naruto looked at his hand, then he thrust it toward Gato, a spike sprouting from his palm that pierced Gato right through the head, killing him. Well damn, I can shoot stuff too. Izuna, who'd been on the sidelines of everything, walked over to them. So is it over? After that, they heard the marching of more feet and groaned at what they thought was another army. It was, but it was an army of the villagers of Nami, led by Inari. They looked around the bridge at the bodies, lingering on Gato. Did we miss the whole thing? Inari asked, holding his crossbow. Hinata chuckled. It would appear so, Inari-kun. Naruto slumped his shoulders. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm exhausted, he said as he started walking back to Tizuna's house. Tsunami widened her eyes at his new look. Are you alright, Naruto-san? Yeah, just a growth spurt. Ryuko walked over and poked his horn. Speaking of, how do you get rid of these horns and spikes? They could be a problem at times. You know, I have no idea, I'll figure it out later. Nami, 3 weeks later. The weeks in Nami had passed in peace, its people enjoying a happiness that they hadn't felt in a long time. Since all of Gato's thugs went down on the bridge, it left his manor completely open, so the people of Nami were able to redistribute all of Gato's wealth, getting the country and its people back on their feet. While that was happening, Team 7 and their new guests passed the time guarding the bridge and relaxing. Isaka looked confusedly at Naruto, now minus the spikes, horns, and fully dressed. That's your 5th glass of milk this morning, are you okay? Naruto nodded as he downed another glass. Yup, just trying to make my Shikatsunyaku stronger. At Yusaka's dumbfounded look, he elaborated, milk helps build strong bones, so it should be vital for my techniques. Hinata, who was sitting next to him, took on a thinking pose, I'm not sure that's how it works. That's stupid, your bones are strengthened by your chakra, milk doesn't do anything. Yusaka wasn't as nice. Since when were you an expert? Naruto asked his annoyed blonde teammate. You know as much about it as we do, even if it's your Kekkei Genkai. Fine, we'll ask the expert. Hey Zabuza, does milk make the Shikatsumiyaku stronger? Naruto called upstairs. How the hell should I know? Just shut up and let me nap. The swordsman called from the second floor. Yusaka shook her head, whatever, that's not what I came here to do. She gave Hinata a pleading look and the brunette walked into the kitchen. Yusaka sat down next to Naruto. I've been thinking over these past couple weeks and I've realized that there's something I needed to say that's long overdue. She looked at Naruto with a bit of hesitance. I'm sorry I shouldn't have sealed your chakra and tried to make you resign. I was just so afraid of living my life without you that I couldn't even think about what you wanted. I was selfish and used your promise to make you do what I wanted, so I'm sorry, she said with a bowed head. Naruto was silent for a minute before he chuckled and patted her head. I already forgave you, Yusaka-chan. She looked at him in surprise. I shouldn't have talked about letting myself die. I know that despite your attitude, you really care for me, and I care for you a lot as well, at least now we know that I'll be sticking around for a lot longer. Naruto said with a grin. Yusaka turned away with a smile, trying to hide her small blush. Thank you, I'd better get going, I need to remove the seals before we leave later. Naruto watched Yusaka leave with a smile, he felt like this mission was just what they needed. It started off kinda boring, but it quickly evolved into something much more interesting. Add to it, he didn't have to go to the hospital anymore. Score 1 for Team Naruto. Ah. Son of a bitch. Strike that. Hinata moved to sit next to Naruto again, a bit of chakra still coating her hand. Oh, don't be a baby, I know that didn't hurt that much. I thought you were done poking at me. I spent at least 12 hours in the last week letting you take notes on my body. I refuse to be your science experiment any longer. Naruto said as he crossed his arms. I'm not experimenting, I'm making notes on the changes to you so I can better heal you when you need it. You should be happy it's me doing this and not the hospital back home. She thought for a second as she took out a notebook, writing in it also, I only told you I was done to see if you subconsciously change your skeletal structure when you aren't on guard. You don't, by the way. Gee, thanks, Naruto said with an eye twitch. Hinata merely smiled and went back to her notebook. So, we all ready to head home? Hinata nodded, yes, once Yusaka-chan is done removing her seals and Tazuna announces the bridge completed, we'll start on our way home. By the way, I don't think I ever asked, how did you get rid of the spikes and horns? Naruto shrugged, I just channeled some chakra into them, then pulled the chakra in, imagining it was taking the bone with them. It seemed to work alright. They sat and talked for a little while until Tazuna walked in with Kakashi, Yuko, Inari, and Yusaka. The old bridge builder was practically bouncing with excitement, the ceremony is almost ready. We all agreed to break for lunch and meet back there to make it official. Tsunami walked out of the kitchen, much happier than the team remembered her being when they first arrived. Alright. We're almost ready in here, just take a spot at the table and we'll bring it out. She turned back into the kitchen. Haku-san, would you go grab Zabuza-san for lunch? Haku walked out of the kitchen wearing her pink yukata. Of course Tsunami-san, I'd be glad to. She walked up the stairs and everyone sat in silence for a minute until raised voices started to filter down from upstairs. I'm not hungry. The voice of Zabuza drifted down. Zabuza-sama, we are guests in their house and if they ask us down for lunch, then it's common courtesy to join them. Too bad, I want a nap and polish the Kubikirabacho and you can't stop me. All was silent for a minute before a large slam sounded through the floor, along with a loud slapping sound. Soon after, Haku walked downstairs with Zabuza, sporting near opposite expressions. Haku's face was the picture of serenity, she smiled happily as she sat at the table. Zabuza, however, looked like he'd gone a few rounds with a biju, he also didn't have his bandages on, showing his sharpened teeth. He sat down and groaned a bit before Haku turned to him and he straightened right up. Tsunami brought out the food, everyone digging in with gusto. After a bit, Kakashi turned to Zabuza, so, have you thought about what you're gonna do now? Isn't there a rebellion going on in Kiri? The swordsman nodded, yeah, I'll probably just keep wandering. I would go enlist with the rebels, but 90% of who I know is there don't trust me worth a damn. A ton of them would be all too happy to just kill me and keep my sword. Haku nodded, I'm not too eager to enlist in the war either, besides, where Zabuza-sama goes, I go. Yuko looked up from her food, wanna come to Konoha with us? The rest of her team along with the subjects of her question went silent, if you don't have anywhere else to go, then why not? It's not uncommon for rogue shinobi to fall in with another village. Naruto nodded and turned to them with a grin, plus, we know Hokage, so we can vouch for you. After all, living on the run must be pretty rough. Hey Yusaka-chan, isn't the apartment next to ours open? When we left it was not a ton of people wanting to live next to the demon girl. The blonde said with a shrug. I'm sure you both will love Konoha. As the heiress of the Hyuga clan, me vouching for you will do wonders. Aku had a bright smile, but kept her composure. I would love to. It'll be so nice to have an actual home to live in. Zabuza, however, was a bit miffed at his apprentice. Hold on Haku, don't go talking like it's already decided. Even if I were to take your offer, how do I know you'll keep your word? How do I know you aren't trying to trick us? Isaka raised an eyebrow. Do you usually nap and live around people you don't trust? The swordsman's eye twitched. I personally don't care if you come, but Haku-chan has become a friend of ours, and we'd love it if she were to be our comrade. Zabuza couldn't see any tells of a liar, and he could practically feel Haku's eyes burning a hole in the side of his head. Ugh fine, you've convinced me, plus we don't have anywhere else to go, and it would be kinda nice to have an actual place of my own again. Haku's smile widened as they returned to their meal, everyone being almost finished now. Azuna was finding the whole situation a little surreal. Less than a month ago, two of these people were out for his blood. Still, he wasn't gonna complain. Well, looks like we're all done, so let's hurry down to the bridge and open it for business. Everyone helped clean up and the group of 10 headed down to the bridge. The workers had gone above and beyond to finish it after Gato's defeat, and with the help of the shinobi and their clones, it got done even faster. Everyone was standing on the high no Kuni end of the bridge, the villagers of Nami there to see them off. Inari grinned brightly at them. You guys'll come back to visit us sometime, right? Naruto gave him a thumbs up, of course. We might not be able to come back quickly, we have work and all, but we'll definitely be back to visit again. Isaka ruffled his hat with a smile. Look after your Ka-san and Jiji, alright. Kakashi was chatting with Zabuza a bit away from the group. By my count, it should take us just a couple days to get back to Konoha at shinobi speed. He watched his student say goodbye to everyone. In all honesty, we're lucky we got a happy ending like this at all. Zabuza nodded with a chuckle. I doubt they'd be as nice to me if they knew I used to work for Gato. Gotta say though, I never thought I'd be willingly going to Konoha, much less in the company of a ragtag bunch of brats like this. Still, I can't help but feel a little happy with how things turned out. He turned to Kakashi with a glare. That stays between us. I don't need them knowing I'm happy with this. Kakashi nodded with a laugh. With that, Team 7 along with Haku and Zabuza started on their way back to Konoha, waving to their former client. As they walked away, Tazuna realized something. We need to give the bridge a name. How about Tazuna's awesome Bridge of Liberation? Tsunami shook her head with a deadpan stare. I don't think that would work. Sanshi gained a fond smile and watched the ninja leave. We'd better thank out lucky stars we had them to help us. Inari thought for a second, then got an idea, walking over to his sulking grandfather. What about the 7-star bridge? Everyone turned to him in confusion. Well, the 7 of them got rid of Gato and his men, and they're pretty much stars here for what they did. Azuna thought for a second. You know that's not half bad, Inari-kun. I like it. The 7-star bridge it is. The people of Nami cheered and started to party the night away.